It's been 18 months since we've done this, and I think it's safe to say it's time to have a little rematch. As always, we'll start off with Shelly, and you'll notice that her hypercharge can greatly enhance the output of her super, but not so much her attack, as it only adds 5% to it. Shelly got 39th place out of our 81 total trials. Nita's hypercharge actually doesn't increase the damage of her bear, however the pet power gear and her star power will do that for her. She ends up in 16th place. Colt is genuinely just a high damage brawler, and when you give him his hypercharge as well as all of his other abilities, he can absolutely shred the save, getting 14th place. Bull gets a lot of help from his hypercharge and his star power. His super doesn't really deal that much damage, but with the help of everything else, he still finishes in 21st place. Not only is Brock's new hypercharge aesthetically pleasing, but it's also a really quick source of damage that allows him to take down the save in just about 5 seconds, putting Brock in 22nd place. As you may expect, El Primo is able to start off with a very high amount of damage, but after he consumes his hypercharge and his super, his speed drops off significantly, which goes to punish him in the end. 36th place. Barley is great at dealing with crowds, but not too surprisingly, he kind of struggled to take down the save because the only ability in his advantage is extra noxious, and when he finally finishes, he's in a 3-way tie for 51st place. Poco never stood a chance to begin with. He's able to do a bit of extra damage with Screeching Solo, but other than that, he's left strumming his guitar, and he gets dead last for 81st place. Even though she has a hypercharge, Rosa placed very low. She also did have the Thorny Glove star power to help her, but outside of that, she had no other source of damage. Once Rosa finally finished, she found herself in 65th place. Thanks to the pet power gear, recoil spring, and her hypercharge, Jessie's able to absolutely crush the save, landing her in 12th place. For Dynamite, we placed the save in the corner of the map to allow the majority of the cluster bomb to hit the save, and this, I'll just say, put him in the top 10. Pick was able to use his hyper super, Mind Mania, and everything else to finish the save really fast, and he also got top 10. The boost from 3 different 8-bit boosters does not stack, but he's still able to crush the save in a bit over 3 seconds, and this puts him in 11th place. Rico, he needs no description. He absolutely crushes it. The only thing that keeps his time over 2 seconds is the fact that his piercing shots will not damage the same target twice. He, of course, is on the leaderboard. Daryl hits the save twice with his super, and then he unloads round after round into the save, finishing pretty quickly and getting 24th place. Penny is the only brawler on this list who actually has a faster time without using any of her ammo. If we keep more targets alive, she can fire more rounds with her mortar. For this clip, the Carls were instructed to throw a burning attack and then use their super and then spam their attacks against the wall. This resulted in Carl getting 28th place. Jackie is just one of those brawlers where her only source of damage comes from her actual attack, which ends up making her take a very long time to destroy the save, even with the help of her hypercharge. She got 76th place. Unfortunately for Gus, I decided that it was unreasonable to set up a bunch of balloons and use that gadget. I mean, it just doesn't make too much sense, does it? Gus got 78th place. As for Bo, he gets a pretty nice burst of damage with his super, but after that he's left picking off the save's remaining health with just his regular attack. He ended up in 31st place. For this clip, Emzas were instructed to use their regular attack at its optimal distance and then approach the save while they reload to get additional damage with their gadget and their super. Ems ended up in 54th place out of 81 total trials. We gave Stu a few walls so he could make some good use out of his breakthrough gadget, but after that he seems to slow down a lot, so much so that he ended up in 73rd place. We began the Piper trial by starting next to the safe and supering away, and then maintained a healthy distance while they spammed attacks using the snappy slamming star power. We would approach the safe to use our gadget, but we would return to a full distance before using an attack. Piper got 47th place. Then for Pam, it was a lot more simple. We just had to drop her super with Mama Squeeze and then just spam all of our attacks till the safe was gone. As a result, Pam got 33rd place. Frank's trial was a little bit difficult to coordinate, but we ended up taking out 3 enemies with reasonable timing and then attacking the safe as fast as we could. The windup for a super would actually slow down his trial, 32nd place. BB's trial took surprisingly low thought to pull off. Now that she has a hypercharge, we just boxed the safe in and spammed bubbles, and that's what we got. As you'd probably expected, BB is in the top 10. For B, we began on top of the safe so we could hit it with the entire super, and then we gave it reasonable distance to allow the gadget to wind up a little bit. B's timing put her in 61st place. nannies were instructed to wind up their super enough so that it could deal significantly more damage with autofocus, and then they began to rush it with their regular attack. Doing it in this order was faster than any alternative, and with that, Nanny ended up in 41st place. Edgar quite simply just had to spam a bunch of attacks and hard landing supers. His very quick reload speed was probably the most favorable thing for his outcome. He was the 37th fastest. Griff is surprisingly able to have the save destroyed by the time the cards from his super return back to him. Now, there's a slight chance the super might be glitched because I don't think it's supposed to do 6600 damage on the way out. Top 10, Groms were instructed to land their attacks at the edge of the healing pad to ensure maximum damage with the help of the X Factor star power. However, he has a rather slow reload speed, and this resulted in him getting 48th place. Cannon Form Bonnie has nothing to help her except for that one gadget that kind of speeds up her reload speed, so she took a while, and she got 71st place. But when you switch her to Bonnie Form Bonnie, she gets the landing from her super, that one weird gadget, and much stronger individual attacks to dish out, so she was able to break the save a little bit faster. This puts her in 44th place. Gale is unfortunately not really the best brawler for Heist. His limited abilities and weak super make him take quite a while, and he goes in 69th place. Solely due to her hypercharge, Colette destroys the save in such an unbelievably fast time. After her hyper supers, there's only a quarter of the save's health left, which obviously she'll finish off fast enough to land herself in the top 10. Belle, on the other hand, seems to be at a bit of a disadvantage because she can't mark the save, and even with her hypercharge, she ends up in 75th place. Ash gets a whole bunch of rats, his rage, and a reload buff thanks to his star power, but even with all of those factors, something bad happens because he still kind of takes a while to finish the job. To give you an idea, this time put Ash in 50th place out of 81 trials. Lola gets to use a perfectly lined up ego and the improvised star power. She was able to keep enough distance to not reduce her super's damage, and this allowed her to destroy the save fast enough to get herself 26th place. Sam's greatest speed came from hitting the save with 3 attacks and then using his super, and then kinda just spamming everything he got until the save was out of health. Sam ended up in 43rd place out of 81 trials. No special pattern was made for Mandy though, since she just has her super and then her attack, and since she was stuck with just one supercharge, she ended up taking quite a while. She got 70th place. Maisie is just another one who gets carried by her hypercharge. Surprisingly enough, she's able to destroy it so fast that she can't even use the pinpoint star power to her advantage. This obviously puts her in the top 10. Hank's best time comes from charging up a full attack and then hitting the save with his super. However, after that he kind of just has to wind up a bit of an attack and then finish it off slowly. It's okay though, he was prawn ready. 38th place. Considering Pearl's heat meter, we found that her best scenario is to use her hyper super and then hit the save with her remaining attacks. She got 18th place. Larry and Lori's optimal speed actually comes from a bit of an interesting tactic. Instead of dropping Lori on top of the save, he's dropped to the side to essentially feed Larry more ammo, which ends up putting them in 30th place. As you may expect, Angela's best time came from charging up each and every attack, but either way, that still did take a long time. His gadgets were not worth being used. He got 60th place. Mortis's initial burst of damage is decently high, but after that he's left taking a long time to finish off the save, primarily due to his low reload speed. Mortis placed 74th. Terra gets carried by all of the little shadows that she summons into the battlefield. What else can I say? This now puts Terra in 13th place. Everyone out there who always hates on Vengeful Spirits is definitely punching the air right now because it just destroys a save for Jean. This put him in 17th place. Max's best course of action is to just stay in motion throughout her trial. However though, she has only one source of damage, so she still does take a while. She ends up tying with Barley and another upcoming brawler for 51st place. Mr. P will start off with his home base as well as a whole bunch of porter reinforcements, and as soon as they all rush to save, Mr. P and his army end up in 20th place. The addition of Sprout's hypercharge enables him to destroy the safe in a significantly faster amount of time than before. With the help of a hypercharge, Sprout ended up in 23rd place. Byron had to be very careful to not accidentally heal his teammates since that would just waste the whole attack. Either way though, once he gets his booster shots and his super onto the save, he still did end up taking quite a while to deliver 80,000 points of damage. He tied with Rosa for 65th place. Squeak's super is able to do a lot of damage for him. After that, he does get the wind-up gadget and chain reaction, and he ended up in 27th place. Lou's super does do damage, but not that much. Either way, he gets to use it anyways, and then after that, he's left to just throwing snow cones at the safe until it finally runs out of health, which, believe me, does kind of take a little while. When he finally finished, Lou found himself in 63rd place. As you may have expected, the trio of Ruffses did start their trial with the little power-up from a super, which was able to increase all of his damage output by 20%, and in the end, Ruffs was in 42nd place. Buzz gets a 0 damage hyper super, but a very high damage hyper attack, so that kind of cancels it out. Anyways, as Buzz makes his way through and finishes the job, he ends up tying with Shelly for 39th place. For this clip, you'll notice that the Fang players keep running above the safe at certain moments, and that is because they were instructed to step above the safe to then use the popcorn gadget, ensuring that a few pieces would land on the safe. He tied with Max and Barley for 51st place. Once the eggs released a bunch of hatchlings, we then all used our gadgets and then just unleashed a bunch of attacks onto the safe. If you pay close attention, you'll notice that Happy Surprise does not work on the safe, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to use Unnatural Order instead. Eve got 59th place. Janet was another brawler that we got to place the safe in the corner for. Even though this allowed her to do a lot of damage with each of her supers, she still ended up taking over 14 seconds to finish the job. This put her in 67th place. As you probably expected, it makes more sense for Otis to have a 4th projectile with each of his regular attacks instead of a 4th second on a super. So that's the build that we used, and it tied Otis with Ems for 54th place. Buster deals maximum damage as long as the other 2 Busters were within his little blue super ring, but unfortunately he had no use for his super in this trial, which got him in 64th place. Gray is limited to just 2 things, finger guns and grand pianos. As a result, his time puts him in 72nd place out of the 81 total trials. As it makes more sense for RT to go straight into his split form, he still cannot mark the save whatsoever, and when you consider that as well as his slow reload speed, he ends up placing himself in 45th place. Although the safe has no mind for Willow to control, she can still deal 1500 damage with the use of her super. And so she ends up taking nearly 20 seconds, which places her in 77th place. Doug gets nothing but his regular attack, and then every now and then that one gadget. However, that doesn't make him the quickest brawler at dealing damage, and he ends up placing 62nd out of 81 trials. Chuck gets his train posts lined up in this weird fashion, and then he's just left spamming attacks and supers until the safe is completely destroyed. Once he finally finished though, his time put him in 57th place. Charlie's super obviously does not work on the safe, however she gets to use her hypercharge as well as even more spiders, which results with her tying with Pam and another brawler for 33rd place. Miko's optimal time comes from him kind of going out of order, where he uses super before his hypercharge, but either way, primarily thanks to his star power, he ends up in 29th place out of the 81 total trials. Before we start, understand that Melody's gadget does not make the impact that you would expect. Either way, all the spinning music notes as well as her attack result in her getting 25th place on this challenge. Weirdly enough, Lily's super will only damage the safe if it's used with her repot gadget. Unfortunately though, her having 1 ammo makes her take quite a while to finish the job, and she ends up in 58th place. This is probably one that you've been waiting for. Spike is able to use a combination of all of his abilities, including now his hypercharge, to destroy the safe in a bit over 1 second, and as you probably expected, this lands him in the top 10. Thanks to Crow and his hyper super, he doesn't even need to use any of his regular attacks by the time the safe is gone. Crow came within milliseconds of beating Spike's time, but he still took just a little bit longer. Either way, he's still placed in the top 10. Leon is capable of a lot of damage, but unfortunately, since his super doesn't do any damage itself, Leon ends up in 46th place. Out of all of the brawlers with a hypercharge, Sandy actually takes the longest. The easiest argument is considering that he's not really meant to be played in Heist. Sandy ends up in 79th place out of the 81 total trials. The trio of Ambers use Dancing Flames almost like their melody notes, and while they do that, they unload all the ammo they possibly can onto the safe, putting Amber in 15th place. In Mecha form, Meg has to stand still to carefully unload her attacks, ensuring that she doesn't miss any projectiles, and then they all get one big arm swing, but she ends up taking over 10 seconds, which puts her in 56th place. But after that, it gets a whole lot worse because then we're on base for Meg, and she has nothing but her tiny pistol. Even with the reload buff from her gadget, she still takes over 24 seconds to finish the challenge, putting her in 80th place. For this clip, surgeons were instructed to stand on top of the safe and attack the cactus, maximizing damage with the star power. He tied with Pearl for 18th place. I guess our Chesters got really lucky because they got nice buffs from each of their gadgets. Chester then went to tie with Charlie and Pam for 33rd place. Cordelius gets to basically just use combo shrooms as well as a star power, since I mean, his super's not going to do any damage. But I mean, in the end, you'll notice that he can complete the job in under 10 seconds, and this puts him in 49th place. Last but most certainly not least, we have Kit. And well, we let one Kit ride another Kit because then that Kit gets to do more damage, but unfortunately only one Kit can ride another Kit when there's only 3 Kits. He can't carry 2 Kits on his back. But I'll remind you, Kit's like a support brawler or something, so he ends up taking quite a while to finally finish the job, and that puts him in 68th place. And here is the leaderboard for the top 10 brawlers for this challenge. That's all I have today. Thank you so much, members, and everyone else, thank you for sticking to the end. I'll see you next time.
shouting?
With the release of Hank, the Brawl Stars roster now has a total of 68 brawlers that you can choose from, and here is the most painful thing about each and every one of them. I'll start off with Shelly and say that the most painful thing about her is when you get your super jumped over by an Edgar. Usually you don't make it out. The most painful thing about Nita is when you deploy your bear and you use the stun gadget, and then the enemies clear the way and you completely miss. You may call this a skill issue, but I have to say that the most painful thing about Colt is being able to hit all of his regular attacks but missing his very powerful super. The most painful thing about Bull is the fact that most other brawlers see him as a supercharge, and using him is still really hard to approach the enemies even if he has his super. The most painful thing about Brock is the fact that his super has 9 to 13 rockets, and sometimes you can still manage to miss every single one of them. The most painful thing about El Primo is the fact that usually you have to rely on receiving damage to fill his super. And believe me, that takes a while, but usually he has no other way to get up close to the enemies. Next up we have Barley, and I have to say that the most painful thing about him is when you're playing Heist and you get stuck playing defense. I mean, surely that's not fun for any brawler, but when you're using a thrower such as Barley, he needs to be pushing the enemy safe. The most painful thing about Poco is when you encounter an assassin. Because Poke is meant to heal himself and his allies, he's not always good offensively, and usually, he's seen as a very weak target to assassins. The most painful thing about Rosa is how hard it is for her to approach enemies. She has no evasive or speedy maneuvers, and she's very tanky, and as a result, she's seen as just a big, giant pillow for the enemy brawlers to shoot at. The most painful thing about Jessie is when you think you found a great spot for your turret, but then a thrower comes out of nowhere and tells you otherwise. I mean, when I'm loading into games, I'm usually hoping that there's no Dynamics on the other team. The most painful thing about Dynamite is that his default attacks seem to approach enemies like magnets, but as soon as I use a stun gadget, they completely miss. The most painful thing about Tick is when you finally fill up his super and you toss the head and you want to watch it chase someone down, but it ends up hitting something useless. In other words, anything that's not a brawler, I don't want the head to crash into. I have experienced this one far too much on my journey to the SYS 64738 title. The most painful thing about 8-bit is slow effects. I mean seriously, for 8-bit they're on a completely different level. The most painful thing about Rico is when you're doing all sorts of sweet maneuvers off the walls of the map and you're having fun, and then all of a sudden your favorite wall gets taken out. The most painful thing about Daryl is when you fill your super and you rush someone and they get away, and then you have to watch your attacks do like 300 damage per shot, but usually that does result from foolish moves. Now, this one's pretty much the same thing as Jessie, but the most painful thing about Penny is when you find a nice place for your mortar to go, and then a thrower appears and ruins the show. The most painful thing about Carl is when you send your attack and you get rushed before you're able to return your attack and get away with a flying hook gadget. The most painful thing about Jackie is when you use your constructing abilities to fix your net in Brawl Ball and then it gets destroyed again, watching all of your hard work disintegrate. The most painful thing about Gus is when you finally decide to be a good teammate, so you send the party balloon animal thing into midair and completely miss your teammate. The most painful thing about Bo is when you're trying to set the perfect trap with your mines and they end up hitting something useless like a Nita Bear or a Mr. P Porter. The most painful thing about Ems is when your attack only hits the enemy for one tick. This happens to me a lot with showdown boxes, and sometimes I don't even have to be standing on top of them. The most painful thing about Stu is the common dash catastrophe. Now, I may not be the best Stu player, but sometimes when you just can't get away from an enemy that you should have gotten away from is purely painful. The most painful thing about Piper is when you're able to hit all of your shots until the enemy is down to taking one more attack to be defeated. It's like once they're one shot, they're not getting hit anymore. The most painful thing about Pam is somewhat similar to Dynamite's, and that is when you're able to hit all of your regular attacks, but once you use a gadget, you completely miss. This usually isn't the best thing for her. The most painful thing about Frank is also probably one of the most agreeable, and that is getting your super cancelled. The most painful thing about BB is when you're up close to an enemy and you get your attack dodged. It's actually a very likely occurrence if you're facing a fast brawler, and when you swing and miss repeatedly, it's a complete nightmare. The most painful thing about B is when you charge your attack and you're feeling good about yourself, and then you miss the supercharged shot, and then that becomes an endless cycle. The most painful thing about Nanny is, well, crashing your super into a wall. I think you've all done it before. The most painful thing about Edgar is waiting forever for your super to charge, and then using it, losing it, and not having it again. Then you have to repeat. The most painful thing about Griff, and honestly he's not doing that good right now, I think the most painful thing about him is anyone that deals a lot of damage. I feel like his defense is really weak right now, and anyone with a high damage output can take him out really fast. The most painful thing about Grom is when your attacks are constantly getting dodged. No matter how good you are, a better opponent might be able to dodge all of them. The most painful thing about Bonnie is after you use your super and take down an enemy, and you gotta wait for a while before you can go back into Clyde form. Technically, as I'm speaking, Hank is not released yet, but I'm gonna predict and say that the most painful thing about him is going to be, after you use your big charged up bubble, how are you gonna finish off the enemy? Are you gonna spam attacks? Are you gonna fill him up a little bit? Like, what's gonna be the best combo? Alright, I could make a video out of this one alone, but I'm gonna go ahead and avoid complaining about Mortis for too long, so here's a clip of a Brawl Ball Mortis that did not take me long to find. The most painful thing about Terra is when you finally fill up your Galaxy Portal thing, and then you completely miss. Just don't pretend like you've never done that before. The most painful thing about Jean is when you capture a rather dangerous enemy and it does not turn out well for you. Like, who would have known that an Ashe could take down a Jean up close? The most painful thing about Max is when you use your teleported gadget and it just gets camped. The most painful thing about Mr. P is watching all 3 little porters get taken out. I mean, my plan as Mr. P is to make an army of porters and take over, but it gets impossible when people destroy them all. The most painful thing about Sprout is when you box yourself in and you think you're safe, but then an enemy joins you in there and then you're not safe. The most painful thing about Byron is assassins. You've got to be kidding me. The most painful thing about Byron is assassins. The most painful thing about Squeak is when you use his wind-up gadget, and then you miss, and you have to watch the bomb go on forever and ever and ever. Like, literally, forever. The most painful thing about Gray is reading the balance changes on January 12th of 2023. I mean, look at the size difference from his old gadget to his new gadget. The most painful thing about Willow is when you capture an enemy with mind control, and before you're able to finish them off, they don't think that they can wait for you to finish off the enemy, they just take you down as fast as they can. Which is a little silly, but it's painful. The most painful thing about Spike is when you make full contact with the target, but only one Spike thing actually causes damage. I mean, come on. The most painful thing about Crow, and I know you have to play him from a bit more of a distance, but it's when he gets taken down so fast because he just has no health. The most painful thing about Leon is when you're invisible and you get shot. And it only becomes worse when you get hit by a crow attack while you're invisible because then your super is pretty much over. The most painful thing about Sandy is the process of filling his super. I mean, sure, it's a great super, but it takes forever to fill up all the way, and the only reason I did it fast in this clip is because I was playing bots. The most painful thing about Amber is when you splash a fire puddle and an enemy walks on it, so you ignite the puddle and then they step off it and you don't end up burning them. I mean, that's what she's meant for, isn't it? The most painful thing about Meg is, well... Hey! Wait for me! Luckily I'm immune to them, so I'll spam them the entire game to annoy anyone who's playing with the sound on. You can call me evil if you want. The most painful thing about Chester, and it's my opinion, it's when you get the healing super. I mean, come on, I want to damage people, I don't care about healing myself. We're now on to chromatics, and for Gale, the most painful thing is the fact that he's able to counter all the tanks like Sam and them, but then he gets taken out by a Colt or someone with the long range like the Stu right here. The most painful thing about Surge is being locked into stage 1 phase. I mean, he's slow, he's weak, he can't even shoot that far, his bounce, it's a disaster. The most painful thing about Colette is encountering a really low health enemy like this Crow here. I mean, I live to see the high numbers with their damage. The most painful thing about Lou is when you drop your skating rink and torture the enemies, and then they get off it, and no one steps on it for the rest of its duration. The most painful thing about Colonel Ruffs is when you use your super and your teammates never pick up the boost. This happens way too much to me, and it's purely painful. The most painful thing about Belle is when you finally fill up her supercharge and you have her beloved marking shot, and then you miss. That's all I have to say about Belle. The most painful thing about Buzz is when you're standing in a situation where the enemies are right outside your supercharge ring and you can't just fill off your super. I mean, I want to fight too. But the most painful thing about Ash is when you finally fill up your rage, but you also have no health. I mean, what are you supposed to do with this full rage if you can't survive a fight with it? The most painful thing about Lola is when you try to do a crazy maneuver with her ego and you have it, and you try to control it without moving Lola herself, and it just becomes a disaster. It happens to me a bit too much. All I have to say is that the most painful thing about Fang is missing all his flying shoes. You'll hardly ever miss a contact with his super, and it doesn't matter if you can't fill it up, am I right? The most painful thing about Eve is when you have your super and you drop down the hatchling spawner thing, but you end up being a bad mother and it gets destroyed before they actually spawn the hatchlings. Because then I feel like I just wasted a lot of use. The most painful thing about Janet is when you try to fly over top of an enemy and bomb them with your super, but then you miss each and every drop that it has. Sometimes the enemy's just a good dodger. The most painful thing about Otis is when you're able to silence an enemy successfully with your super, but you're not able to finish the job because something gets in the way and you can't really approach them safely. I know you'll comment skill issue for this one, but the most painful thing about Sam is getting his knuckle buster stuck. I've done it before. Water's not very friendly to him. The most painful thing about Buster is when you have your super active but you still get hit. An enemy can get either too close or get to the right angle and then you're not safe at all. The most painful thing about Mandy, well, it's surely not this. The most painful thing about Mandy is when you miss your super. I mean, it's as simple as it gets. The most painful thing about RT is when you take the second form and an enemy finds the little base part of it, and you get defeated. Not much you can really do about that one. And finally, the most painful thing about Maisie is when you miss a very close attack because her attack starts off slow as molasses. And that is it. Anyways, that covers the most painful thing about all 68 brawlers in the game. If you stuck to the end, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out. You saw the title, and now you're here. So I present to you 68 useless facts for 68 brawlers. Let's begin. As always, we're gonna start off with Shelly, and did you know that both her laughing pin and her heart pin use the same voice line? Upon activation, they'll both say, Fantastico! If you choose Gummy Bear Nita and you deploy your bear right before your brawler is defeated, you can actually have a different colored bear than your brawler model. Nita will spawn in as a new color, but the bear will spawn in corresponding to the color Nita was when she summoned him. Colt seems to have some of the least noticeable star powers. In other words, when you compare him to other brawlers, it's actually really difficult to figure out which one he's using. Even though Bull is perfectly capable of using his super to dash over water, you're actually unable to aim it in a way that it would end on top of water, even though Bull would just continue dashing. Brock and his many skins all seem to have their own unique rocket designs, but when you use his rocket fuel gadget, the enlarged rocket is the same for everyone. Have you ever looked at El Primo's name and wondered, what would happen if I Google translated it? Well, here you go. He becomes the cousin. You may be aware that a lot of brawlers actually have their voice lines as a mastery title, but Barley never actually says you got served. His real voice line is, You've been served. He was so close. Poco is the only brawler in the Mexican Entertainers trio who doesn't have any voice lines that are fully in Spanish. He does come close though. Poco goes loco! If you take a look at Rosa's pins, you'll notice that she's wearing the pink flower thing that pops up when she activates her super, but in her special pin, there's also one of those flowers sitting right behind her. So where does that one come from? You're familiar with Jessie's Energized star power, right? Well, I'm here to say that if you manage to get two Jessies on the same team, no matter how hard you try, you can never heal your teammate's Jessie turret with the star power. In Dynamite's fidget spinner gadget that you probably never use, he throws exactly 20 sticks of dynamite with each activation. Also, the damage does not scale with power cubes. Tick is short. After my seemingly endless experience with Brawl Stars, I have come to the conclusion that he is the shortest brawler in the game. Because hey, he doesn't have to cheat and use a vehicle. SYS 64738. Quite the title, isn't it? After a tough 5-second Google search, I come to realize that it's actually an old computer routine that people would use to reset a computer. If you take a look at Rico's Mastery Road, you'll notice that the preview for his facepalm pin doesn't have his hand in it. I know this is bad, but bear with me please, 68 brawlers is a lot. If you've played Daryl before, you've probably heard of his voice line that goes, Party on the poop deck! Well, literally, that's just the raised deck in the back of a boat. So, Penny is the only brawler who can no longer break walls. No matter how hard you try, Supercell already beat you on this one. If you take Carl's heat ejector gadget on a still standing target and carefully place it, it can actually set them on fire for 2 rounds, dealing a lot of damage. This was all done with 1 attack. You're familiar with Jackie, right? It goes without saying that she was released a long time ago, but she was actually the last super rare to be released all the way before Gus, 2.5 years later. Now on the topic of our spooky friend, Gus is able to fill up his spirit meter off of many weird targets, but unfortunately Power Boxes is not within that group. Out of all brawlers that you can choose from, Bo has the shortest name with only 2 characters. It's even shorter than RT's name because technically that still has 3. You've seen the spike socks that hang over the left end of the Brawl Pass, right? Well, if you take a look at Emz's Superfan M skin, you'll notice that she's also wearing that same pair of spike socks. If you've played Stu with the volume on before, it's safe to say that he has quite a lot of stuttering in his voice lines. Well, a little while back, I created a version of his voice without any stuttering, and here's an example.
Spin to win, baby!
As of right now, Piper is the most famous brawler. At least that's what I think. The most viewed video on the Brawl Stars channel is all about her. There are currently 12 legendary skins in the game that you can get right now, and Pam is lucky enough to hold one of them. However, it's not her most popular skin. In a recent poll done by Lex, the discovery was made that the Stonks Pam skin is more favored by the community than Evil Queen Pam. When you use Frank's default pin, the voice line associated is actually longer than the pin itself. In other words, you'll still hear the voice line after the pin has gone away. The logo from BB's mastery icon actually comes from the back of the jacket on her default brawler model. B has a total of 28 voice lines, and out of that, only 10 of them use the word B. Was that less than you expected? If 2 players using Nanny both use the return to sender gadget, the return damage will in fact bounce back and forth, which I thought was pretty funny. Edgar was the only brawler that was ever released free to the public. Let's hope it stays that way. You probably know that Griff's super has a really wide spread and that the individual banknotes deal more damage the further they go out. But if you manage to hit all 5 of the projectiles at the fullest range, which I think is impossible, you will deal a total of 9,900 damage. Aside from his default skin, of course, Grom has no skins that aren't holiday themed. But let's face it, he only had 2 to choose from. Out of all brawlers, Bonnie has the most pins that are facing away in the preview, but there's still only 3 of them. In the 1987 movie Full Metal Jacket, Gunnery Sergeant Hartman says,
"You will not laugh, you will not cry, you will learn by the numbers, I will teach you."
And as you probably know, Hank says it too.
"You will not laugh, you will not cry, you will learn by the numbers, and I will teach you."
If Mortis stands still and dashes with his gadget, he's actually faster than he would have been if he just runs. If you take Terra's triple shadows from the gadget and let them face off with a single shadow from Black Portal, the larger one will win. If you take a look at Jean's Vengeful Spirits gadget, it says it will target everything within its range, but it actually stops at 20, but it's not like you'll ever find that in a real match, so I guess it doesn't matter too much. If you want to fill Max's entire super without firing one attack, it took me about 193.5 tiles. Perhaps it meant 200? So the default brawler's name is Mr. P. What does the P stand for? I wonder. But the real question is, how come the Mr. Fly skin isn't just called Mr. F? If you launch Sprout's hedge next to Skull's, and then you retract it with his gadget, it can actually break skulls that are next to the hedge itself. Back around his release date, Byron actually used to play his getting defeated voice lines after defeating other brawlers. This was even brought to the attention of his voice actor, which I thought was very interesting. You're probably aware that Squeak's default skin has a slight bit of transparency to it, but if you take a look at his true silver or true gold skins, you cannot see through it at all. If you think you can, it's just a reflection. A lot of players are under the misconception that Gray has a voice line since he goes pew when he attacks, but that's literally just his attack sound itself. It's the equivalent of this. An example of an attacking voice line would actually be more something like this. Even though Willow is known for lobbing her attacks, which can of course go over walls, she's not labeled as a thrower, or I guess more recently artillery, but I guess it only makes sense that she's a controller. If you take a look at some of the skins for Mask Spike, you'll notice that one of the options is Nina's bear Bruce, but in another option of Mask Spike, it shows him dressed as Tick. Is Tick trying to impersonate Tick himself, or just Tick's head? When Crow dives with a super, he actually lands a lot faster than El Primo. What do you think? Is gravity just stronger on this bird? If you take a close look at the Trick or Treat Leon skin, you'll notice that there's a face on his candy basket. And if I'm not mistaken, that's of course the face of Poco. Sandy's eyes are closed in 6 of the 9 previews for his pins, which is the most out of all brawlers. If you manage to get 2 ambers on the same team, you cannot ignite the other amber's puddle directly, But if you manage to connect their puddle to your puddle and ignite your puddle, the fire will spread and burn all of it. This one's a little boring, but if you click on Meg's brawler profile, you can spin Meg, but you can't spin the mech sitting right there behind her. The most useless piece of information I can give you about Chester is that he actually has a star power where you can see what his super is in advance. That is pretty useless, am I right? You've probably heard of Gale's voice lines about Mr. P, right? Well, if you take a look at his default brawler model, literally everything he has is owned by Mr. P, which only makes sense. Surge's Bro title is the shortest player title that you can unlock. Of course, it only has 3 characters. If you take a look at Colette's pin set, you'll notice that her special pin features Spike in it, and that is actually the only brawler pin that features a different brawler within it. Unfortunately, I decided not to count Emza's skin pin. In the player profile icon that you can unlock in Lou's Mastery Road, you'll notice that the snow cone has a smiley face on it. But if you look at Lou's actual brawler model, there is no smiley face present. If you manage to get multiple players as Ruffs in the same team and they're all using field promotion, the boost does not stack. Players are limited to 30 HP increase per second. You know Belle's super bouncy gadget, right? If you manage to get the best out of it, the bolt will travel approximately 29 tiles. Out of Buzz's many skins, he only has one with sunglasses that you can see through, and that would be Buzzette. If you look at the little logo that represents Ash's rage meter, it looks like a crown, but it actually represents the broom that Ash's default skin is holding. But Ash's broom is literally shaped like a crown itself. So, did you know that there's actually a limit to how far you can teleport with Lola's gadget? I know, but did you ever actually get her ego that far away? Fang has a nearly identical hat in his default skin and his Furious Fang skin, but if you take a closer look, only his default skin has the little popcorn logo that also happens to be his mastery icon. Brawlers in the same trio are supposed to love each other, right? Well, if you look back to Eve's introduction trailer, it actually shows her targeting Colonel Ruffs for her babies to be parasites to. If you take a look at Janet's pin set, you'll notice that her special pin for her default skin has a really funny smile. Well, that is the only pin in the game that has that expression. Last year, when Otis was released, his unlock sound actually played a Brock voice line. Here's some unedited, low-quality footage.
Time to move to the boombox groove.
I hope you like the sound of Sam's voice lines, because he actually has the most out of all brawlers with a total of 53 voice lines. Buster loves his sunglasses, so much that he is the only brawler who wears sunglasses that is seen with them on in every single pin. Thanks to the Mandy's Candy theme, Mandy is the only brawler who has a song about them, but I'll let you decide whether or not that's a good thing. Technically, RT has the longest range in the game. Because of his second form, hypothetically he can attack from infinitely far away. Maisie is the only brawler in the game who has one arm. Just a reminder, Otis has no arms and a little tube thing, but still, Maisie's quite the one-arm wonder. This video was recorded before Brawl Talk had aired, so the 2 new brawlers will not be featured in it. Thank you for understanding. And that is all I have for today. Thank you very much for sticking to the end, and I will see you later. Peace out.
Buzz off. Let's see what's buzzing.
Hello, 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 hello.
Running error.
Read the terms and conditions. Money, 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 money. Leave me alone.
To sleep, perchance to dream.
This video idea came from a Discord message. Big shout out to Redix. So today I will be looking at the mastery title of all 70 brawlers, and I will be discussing with you the origin. Let's begin. So for Shelly's no time to explain title, you may have noticed that those 4 words aren't hinted anywhere near her brawler in the actual game, but that's because the phrase actually originates from a classic Brawl Stars ad where it shows Colt's introduction to the Brawl Stars world, and when he's confused by what's going on, Shelly says,
No time to explain.
Nida's The Untamed title kinda just comes from her character. You'll notice that the word untamed can very easily apply to Nida because her in-game behavior is very feral. Colt's title, The Pretty, is a lot more basic. I mean, look at this man. He also does talk about it a lot.
I'm too pretty!
Bull's Bulldozer title is just fitting. I mean, this word is completely branded by him. It's in his name, it's in his super, and it's even in his voice lines. So this title's pretty easy to understand. Brock's boom title pretty much just comes from his character. I mean, he shoots rockets and they go boom, and he's holding a boom box, and I'm pretty sure he says boom quite a few times. So I mean, this title does make a lot of sense. Primo's El Luchador title simply translates to the fighter. And I mean, El Primo is simply just a Spanish-speaking wrestler or fighter, so his title isn't really that far-fetched. Barley's title works out just fine because, as you know, he's a bartender, which of course means that he serves people. Not to mention, when he does defeat other brawlers in-game, he will say,
You've been served.
Mariachi music is a genre of Mexican music that looks like this. So, when you consider Poco and his El Mariachi title, it just about makes sense. Rosa is literally a botanist. Both of her gadgets and one of her star powers all play a role with bushes, so touching grass is probably Rosa's favorite thing to do. Jessie's The Builder title comes from the fact that she's a little tech-savvy engineer with passion in constructing weapons. Even from her voice lines, you can tell that she built Scrappy on her own.
Constructing.
Dynamite's Birdie 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 title simply comes from the fact that there's a canary hidden in pretty much all of his skins. Not to mention, he does have that voice line that goes,
Birdie, birdie, birdie.
Did you ever see a tick just use his super and before it makes contact, he's just running around without a head? That's goofy, right? Well, yeah, that's pretty much what I picture when I think of his title. SYS 64738 is just a simple computer restarting routine, but this reminded me of the much more important component of history, 8-Bit's Project Laser. This was a little Easter egg from the past where you could basically go into 8-Bit's memory, but sadly I couldn't actually find 8-Bit's complete title anywhere. The meaning behind Rico's title, The Lover, seems to come from a few things, but my favorite one is the Brawlin' Times commercial that Rico starred in. This commercial featured Rico's ultimate passion for a vending machine, but don't worry, then it became Piper. Daryl is literally a pirate, and I mean, pirates say R, so I guess that's why pirate has a lot of R's in it. Penny is also a pirate, and I mean, pirates are considered salty, not to mention when they're out at sea, they're in the salt water. Oh, and she also carries a barrel of salt around with her. The Geologist is about as fitting as a mastery title gets. Carl's entire life revolves around geology, and you'll even see it in his voice lines, where most of them are just rock puns that are really hard to put up with. I'm not sorry. Jackie's That title seems to come from the fact that she's usually up to no good. You'll see it in both her voice lines and her pin animations, which leads us to believe that behind the drill she might just be saying something a little funny. There seems to be a lot of lore around the brawler Gus who's just lost. This comes to be a perfect description behind his player title. The Bo's One with Nature title is pretty obvious. I mean, he literally tells you,
I am one with nature.
Ems's #haters title comes directly from one of her voice lines.
They say she's too wrapped up in herself. #haters.
Stu's Wicked title comes from his more wicked side, from when he joined the Bad Randoms. His nickname in the band is Wicked Stu, and I mean, it's pretty fitting for his rockstar style, right? We all know that Piper's Gunbrella is best used at the longest range, but more importantly, she is the classic sniper of Brawl Stars, so she is very suited to be known as the Sniper. Your Mom. That's a funny title, right? Well, it's been proven that she is the mother of Jessie, and I mean, a lot of her functions have the word mama in it, so I mean, getting this player title was just perfect for her. Frank is also known as the Tank. He is tankier than a literal tank whose name was Hank. But, I mean, the literal tank whose name was Hank did get nerfed, so yeah, he has a lot of health, and he's actually the highest HP brawler in the game, so the title is just fitting. BB is a cool cat. Just ask her.
I'm a cool cat.
Bee enjoys bees, bee outfits, bee drones, bee puns, bee everythings. So it starts to make a lot more sense when you consider the fact that once you master her, you become the queen bee. Nanny is described as one who loves her friends and looks over them with a watchful eye. So her title makes a lot of sense because it sounds just like something a nanny would do. Edgar's CEO of Brawl Stars title is so iconic and it just comes from one of his voice lines.
CEO of Brawl Stars.
Griff is greedy. Whether it's punishing his employees or just ripping off his customers, it's perfect for Griff to be known as the Greedy because he absolutely loves
Money, 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 money.
Rom's title is something else. His title is with one left hand. He says,
With one left hand.
but he does everything with his right hand. Such a mysterious individual. Bonnie is reckless. She's just a child that shoots herself out of a cannon, and I mean, she already knocked out a tooth. No matter what, she causes mayhem and literally throws grenades, so being the reckless is extremely fitting for her. Hank is a military fish who has a pretty cool looking tank, and if you take a look at his Lieutenant title, you'll notice that it's a combination of the Lieutenant military rank and the fact that he's a little shrimp. Get it? Cause he's small, like Lil Lieutenant? I'll let Mortis tell you.
I am a creature of the night.
What's in the cards? Tara's title asks. Basically, she throws tarot cards, which are like knowledge of the future seeking cards. So, for a psychic like her, it's only normal for a question like that to be present. Gene's Talk to the Hand title matches the name of his mythic gear. And basically, if you have something you want to say to him, just say to the giant hand that's coming to your face that's about to slap you. Max looks a lot like the Lightning McQueen of Brawl Stars. Oh, but she's on a lot of energy drinks. So, when Lightning McQueen says,
I am speed.
Max and all her energy drinks scream it in all caps. Mr. P is the boss. I mean, he has Gale and Lou working for him, and literally both of their default skins are just branded by Mr. P. He's a very grumpy boss with a very drippy bow tie. You know it, Sprout loves plants. I mean, its super is literally building a plant wall. Sprout will tell you,
I like trees.
so it only makes sense to be a tree hugger. Byron has some very unique character. I mean, he's literally a snake oil salesman, but don't tell him I said that. Either way, if he makes a sale, I'm sure he would yell,
Sensational.
so it's only fitting that his title is The Sensational. Those of you who are new to the game or just don't know, Squeak came about completely on accident. He's known to be Ruff's accidental creation, so it only makes sense that, of course, his mastery title is an accident, which looks hilarious on starting screens. Gray is silent. Gray is shady. Gray even wears a trench coat in some cases. But my friends, I've already said it. He is known as the Shady. Willow has a bit of an evil characteristic. Once she feels her super, she throws a tadpole over your head and controls your mind. With that being said, it only makes sense that her mastery title is in your head. Doug's mastery title says wiener because he has a hot dog stand where he's a hot dog or a wiener vendor. What did you think I was gonna say? I don't think there's anyone that's more one of a kind than Spike. Spike has so many traits that no other brawlers have and plays such an interesting role in the game. So I think it's just perfect that he gets to have the one-of-a-kind title. Crow gets his caw-caw title because, I mean, real crows say it, and of course because the Brawler Crow says it in the commercial and in the game. Leon is sneaky. Do I even need to say it? He has gadgets that trick you, a super that will hide from you, and all sorts of things that will just sneak around you. I mean, he used to be known as the Sneaky Assassin. Now, he's just the Sneaky. Almost everything about Sandy is about sleep. His gadgets, his mythic gear, even some of his skins. So it's only fitting that he is known as the Sleepy. Amber might be an arsonist in the disguise of an entertainer, because you'll see that everything about her is about starting fires, burning bushes, catching people on fire. Let's just say that she's too hot to handle and Firestarter is just perfect for her. Meg's Tech Support 2.0 kinda just comes from one of her voice lines.
Tech Support 2.0.
Chester is a jack of all trades but a master of none. This Joker has way too many tricks up his sleeve, and he's always going to surprise you with his different gadgets, supers, moves, anything, because it's always something new. I mean, look at his face. He's definitely up to something. Gale was introduced as a janitor in Mr. P's hotel, even though it says it nowhere in his description. Either way, he's always working on something with his snowblower thing, so I guess that's where he gets the janitor from. Surge's title is Bro. I mean, I guess he's just some superhero fraternity dude. Take it away, Surge.
Take it easy, bro.
Colette is a cashier and she works for The Greedy. And given that info, I'm pretty sure there's some Griff-imposed tax on the merchandise, but since Colette is appointed at the job, she is known as the Collector. Oh, she also collects like all the brawlers in her scrapbook. It's super freaky. I guess now we're on Lou, and all I can say is Uncle Lou
Is here for you.
I don't think there's anything else behind it. Back about 2.5 years ago, we were all introduced to Colonel Ruffs. But I mean, his name was so big that Supercell decided to nerf it. Literally, they nerfed his name. But luckily, fast forward a few more months into the future, and Colonel was brought back in the form of his player title. When you add the Star title to Bell, you get something amazing. Bell Star was a real American outlaw in the Wild West. And as you know, especially in its early days, Brawl Stars was a Wild West themed game. So honestly, introducing Belle and giving her a Star title was just amazing. Buzz's Born Bad title is super similar to Stu's. Buzz's nickname in the Bad Randoms band is Born Bad Buzz. And believe me, he is born bad. I mean, look at him. Oh, wait, sorry. Now look at him. Ash is trash tier. I mean, look at him. He's a dude in a trash can. I don't really know if there's more I can say about that. Lola is such a drama queen. She's a very egotistical, kinda mean Brawlywood star, and I mean, that's pretty much her whole description. If you have mastered Fang, you have mastered the art of launching one's sneaker towards the enemy, which is somehow really painful, I guess, but Fang is a master at fighting without his hands, so he is just the sneaker artist. Eve is also a mother, just like Pam, but unfortunately for her, she got the less funny mom title. I mean, have you ever seen a mother in one of your games before? Janet's title, the Rocket, pretty much just comes from the fact that she's able to fly around the map like a rocket. I mean, she even calls herself Rocket Girl.
Rocket Girl!
Otis had such an aesthetically pleasing release to the game. He's like a deep sea splatter painter and his art is amazing, so it only makes sense that he gets to be called the artist. Sam is a big, scary, punchy dude who is sure to leave a mark if he punches you
In your face.
because I mean, he is huge and it can happen, right? Buster is walking around with a literal movie projector, and when he gets excited, he screams,
Blockbuster.
do I even have to mention that he has a star power named Blockbuster? I think that's enough background. So I guess Mandy's a little tough, but since she's like the queen of like sugar and candy and cookie land, she's not just tough, she's a tough cookie. Remember the mystery at the hub season? RT has his eyes on everyone, all the time. So like, why not just call him the Watcher? Maisie is a master of disaster. After you see Fang and Buster making a mess, she's always there ready to clean it up. Cordelius's toxic title actually is not referring to the players that main him. Instead, it means that, you know, the mushrooms he's dealing with, they're pretty toxic and dangerous. Anyways, this video was so fun to make. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you watched the whole way to the end, thank you very much. It means a lot to me. With that being said, that's all I have for today, so peace out, everyone. 3 years ago, Brawl Stars introduced the idea of the Brawl Pass, and since then, there have been 19 seasons or 18 full seasons, and I made a poll asking you to vote on your least favorite one. We ended up getting over 1,200 votes, and here is where each season landed. First up, with just 12 votes, we have Season 7, Jurassic Splash. Now, the season itself came with a pretty sweet Carl skin, and it also introduced us to Buzz, the brawler who was released so beautifully balanced, it took him over 14 months to get his first balance change. And it was just a little HP buff. The season also held the release of Griff and the Bad Randoms skin set, which also brought us the Bad Randoms music that you can find on YouTube and even Spotify. This season took place during the summer of 2021, and it was overall a great time for Brawl Stars. Up next, with just 14 votes, we have Season 10, Year of the Tiger. This season brought a beautiful looking pixelated environment, as well as perhaps one of the most beloved and popular chromatics ever released. Fang was introduced as a kicking dude who seems to enjoy eating while he fights people. Either way, Fang quickly became one of the most popular chromatics in the game. I mean, seriously, next time you start a game, see if anyone has the Sneaker Artist title. There were no other brawlers released throughout the season. However, this season and all following seasons now had daily quests awarding 200 points instead of 100 upon each completion. Up next with just 20 votes, we have the Stunt Show season. Now, I personally wasn't a big fan of this season, but it did bring us another Carl skin as well as the brawler Janet, and of course her Valkyrie Janet skin. Janet was released a little bit broken. Her super at the time was easier to charge, so she spent a lot more time flying, and she was able to use the drop the base gadget while flying. And believe it or not, Janet was actually never buffed. She has only been nerfed since her release. She's still boring to play, but very loved by the community. Okay, I'm done. Aside from the Brawl Pass itself, the Stunt Show season also brought Sprays into the game, as well as Bonnie, who would finish up the Stunt Show trio. Up next with 23 votes, we have Season 2, The Summer of Monsters. Now, I was actually in the middle of quitting the game during this season, so I never actually played it, but Season 2 introduced us all to Surge, as well as Mecha Paladin Surge, and of course, Super Ranger Brock as the Tier 1 skin. Anyways, Surge was odd. His super was straight up and down, and it stayed like that for a while, but his attacks also split if they hit nothing. That meant Stage 4 Surge was like an off-brand spike. Also, I still have not forgotten the gadget Surge had when he was released. This Brawl Pass, as well as all following Brawl Passes, now have 70 tiers to collect rewards from. Season 2 also brought us Super City Rampage, a game mode that I literally had to cheat to win on. Those of you who missed it, it was basically a weekend game mode where a giant dinosaur just sat there eating a city while you had to take it out, like similar but not similar to boss fight. And our next season with just 25 votes is Season 6, The Gold Arm Gang. This season brought us Arthur Morgan Colt, the Chromatic Brawler Belle, and what I think is the best Tier 70 skin to ever exist. Belle was introduced a bit more on the weaker side, but nothing will stop her super from being incredibly fun to use. And a bit after her release, the grounded star power made her super even more fun to use. I'm kidding, I know you don't use that. She may have had my favorite ever Tier 70 skin, but it was also the last Brawl Pass I didn't get, so I will never get to use Gold Hand Belle. Season 6 also brought a lot of small, but lovely features, such as the ability to preview skins in the training cave before you buy them. And of course, Season 6 introduced us to my favorite 3v3 mode, Knockout. Up next, with 27 votes, we have none other than Season 17, Mystery at the Hub. This season brought us RT, probably one of my favorite chromatics to ever exist, as well as his Crimson RT skin. RT was also released pretty balanced. The only broken thing about him was the incredibly fast unload speed in his second form, but that was addressed relatively fast. Now he's one of the most fun brawlers to play and has a beautifully made set of voice lines. He's definitely one of my favorite chromatics, so he really has made me love the season. This season was close enough that I can actually see its rewards, and oh, I never got the skin. Season 17 also brought us the new Masteries system, as well as player titles, profile pictures, facepalm pins, and a lot of crazy rewards that makes it a lot more fun to grind brawlers other than pushing for high trophies or a high power league rank. It also added the new battle card system, and overall it was a great update altogether. Season 17 also introduced us to Willow, another great brawler, and finally, a feature that I am very excited to use, they put the Brawl Pass in the Supercell store for you to buy to either use for yourself or donate to another player. Our next least favorite season only has 32 votes, but still, that would be Season 8, Once Upon a Brawl. Season 8 brought us Ash, as well as the Ninja Ash skin, and of course Princess Shelly. Ash arguably has the best voice lines for any chromatic, but he also has a pretty interesting trait called the Rage Bar. Besides that, there's not too much to his brawler build, but he does have one of the best Tier 70 skins. Aside from that, that was surprisingly the first season since the Brawl Pass started that had rewards on every single tier, and of course in Season 8, a wild Meg made her first appearance. So overall, even with 32 votes, Once Upon a Brawl still did pretty good as a season. Up next, with just one more vote, we have Season 5, The Star Force. This season introduced the best brawler to ever exist. For whatever reason, his unload speed was scary fast on his release, but that would be fixed a short while later. But still, he is the only brawler that can make his teammates terrifyingly OP. This season didn't have too many bonus features, but it did begin the special special quests that would grant you Brawl Pass progression if you complete the first 5 stages of game modes like Boss Fight. The next season had 36 votes, and that would be Season 14, Robot Factory. Season 14 brought us Sam, as well as Caesar Sam, and of course Desperado Poco. Sam was released with a pretty strong super that would later get nerfed. It also came with a broken star power that literally everyone uses, as well as a slightly annoying gadget that of course everybody also uses. Seriously, does anyone else use Pulse Repellent? And of course, outside of the Brawl Pass, Gus was released in Season 14. And of course, the season introduced us to Last Stand, which so weirdly vanished very short after. Here's where the seasons start to get a little more hated. Coming in with 43 votes, we have Season 15, Ghost Station. Better known as the Busted Buster season, this season introduced Buster as a busted chromatic, and he got nerfed pretty fast. He literally got 10 nerfs in a bit over 2 months just to get him to a bit more of a balanced state. I mean, his 6-second damage stopping super was almost identical to the 6-second damage stopping super that broke Rosa on her release, but I guess no one learned. This season gave us Trash Panda Penny and of course Chainsaw Buster. In terms of brawlers, this season gave us both Gray and Chester on the same day. Gray was obtainable by a quest where he had to deal quite a lot of damage, and Chester, well, he was the first brawler that most of us would have unlocked with credits, but he was a legendary, so it did take a lot of them. Up next, with 46 votes, we have Season 3.
Welcome to Star Pop.
This season gave us Colette, who wasn't good at first, but it did give us Trixie Colette, who was a decent skin, as well as the Poco Star skin. Outside of the Brawl Pass, Pinpacks as well as Amber were welcomed warmly into Brawl Stars, and overall the theme was in fact pretty nice. The next season had 52 votes, and that would be Holiday Getaway. This season gave us Lou as a chromatic, as well as his King Lou skin and Bellhop Mike. As for Lou, he introduced a new Brain Freeze ability where he could stun enemies after enough attacks in a short time, but overall he seemed pretty weak. Contrary to Janet, Lou has still not received a single nerf to this day. Later on in the season, Byron and Edgar would both be released into Brawl Stars. Up next, with 55 votes, we have Season 16, Candyland. This season would provide us with Mandy as the chromatic, who's just another long-range brawler, as well as the Magma Mandy skin and Gummy Bear Nita. I personally think that she was released balanced. Her super takes quite a few attacks for the first one to charge, and it's super fun to use, but usually it only one-shots the lowest HP brawlers, assuming it makes contact. And of course, this would be the first Brawl Pass with no Brawl Boxes. Our next season on the list had 60 votes, and that would be Season 9, Brawlywood. Lola was released a bit broken. Her ego was a literal duplicate of herself in terms of damage, and Supercell took care of that relatively quickly. Her tier 70 skin wasn't too much to talk about, but at least it was better than the Terminator Bull skin that didn't even get sunglasses. This season didn't have too many other talking points, but it was the first season with Club League added. Our next season only got 81 votes, and I think it deserved more, and that would be Season 11, Biodome. This season gave us Eve as its chromatic and Spiky Eve as its very lame tier 70 skin, as well as Firefly Rico, which I just prefer not to use. Eve stayed broken for a while. Her star power made her be able to spam, and I mean spam hatchlings, and it wasn't balanced for a good 4 months of her existence, but hey, in the right situation, she is a perfect counter to Mortis. This season also started the thing where tier 0 skin and tier 70 skins can be bought with gems a year after, like someone would actually want to buy Spiky Eve. The next season also got 81 votes, and that would be Season 18, The Rescue, our most recent season that brought us Maisie as a chromatic and Jungle Queen Maisie as the tier 70 skin, but no tier 1 skin at all. From this point on, the tier 1 slot in the Brawl Pass was reserved for Bling. Maisie was honestly released a bit underwhelming, but she did receive a few necessary buffs. But still, she isn't the most fun brawler to use since her attack does start slow as heck. Anyways, at this point there is no such thing as Pinpacks, and that's when Supercell decided to add the brawler Hank. He was released extremely broken, and he stayed that way for a little while until he got some crazy major nerfs. Nowadays, Hank is garbage. But overall, a lame chromatic as well as a lot of features that players didn't like caused the season to go pretty wrong and get a lot of dislike from the community. With 171 votes, our second most hated season was Season 1, Terra's Bazaar. Granted, this season brought us Gale as a Chromatic, who was not very good at his release, as well as the Merchant Gale skin at tier 60. You heard me right, tier 60. They didn't even have the last 10 tiers for the first season. The Brawl Pass also had a Mega Box at tier 1 instead of a skin. Gale was released awful. His super knocked him back like a firecracker, his launch gadget sent him far, and his star power ended up looking like a max super. Both Nani and Sprout were released during the season, but that wasn't enough to prevent the season from getting a huge amount of dislike from the players. And finally, with 401 votes, a third of all voters selected this season to be the worst, we have Season 13, the Deep Sea Brawl. What exactly went wrong with this season? They added Sharktooth Colt, which I thought was an okay skin, but they also had Otis as the Chromatic, who may have been one of the worst Chromatics ever upon his release. Otis's concept was an okay idea, but it had a terrible delivery. In its initial stage, it was really hard to benefit off of silencing another brawler, since it did 0 damage and it didn't recharge your super at all. Like, if you didn't hit them at a really close range, there was almost no point in even using your super. This was also the season that reworked Penny, and in my opinion, completely ruined her. This season also gave us the game mode Hunters, which I thought was interesting for about a day. Oh, and this was also when Siege was removed completely. Anyways, if you're here at this point, please tell me why you hated the Otis season so much. But anyways, there you have it. That's where every season stands on the most disliked seasons poll. If you stuck all the way to the end, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out. As of right now, the Brawl Stars roster has a total of 67 brawlers to choose from, and today I'm going to do my best to cover the most satisfying thing about each and every one of them. Most of these are things that you can definitely relate to, however some of them are just guilty pleasures I have that definitely don't give me any advantage towards winning. Let's begin. Starting off with Shelly, I've got to say her most satisfying thing is definitely using her super at close range. I mean, sure, it's fun to hit someone from a distance using Shell Shock and then take them down with Clay Pigeons, but if you can get up close and watch yourself do 4,300 damage with one super, it's amazing. For Nita, I think the most satisfying thing definitely comes from using her bear and successfully landing the stun gadget and then watching it shred the enemy. Bonus points if you use Hyper Bear. This one's definitely much harder for players like me who have a bad aim, but for Cold, it's easily lining up your super and hitting multiple targets, especially if you get lucky enough for it to fully refill. As for Bull, and I know this one's a bit controversial, the most satisfying thing is finding a Mortis in Showdown. The lengths I go to bring him down are definitely a little excessive, but nothing's stopping me. The most satisfying thing about Brock is being able to hit multiple attacks because his blast size is so big. Also, he can sometimes win encounters up close that he should not be winning, like I did with the BB right there. Now get ready for this. The most satisfying thing about El Primo is when you're carrying all the gems in Gem Grab and it's countdown, and you rush the enemy team with your super and take them all out. Please don't actually try this. The most satisfying thing about using Barley is when you know you're facing a standstill target such as the high save or enemy's equipment like a Jessie turret, and you know that when you throw your attack, it's going to get its fullest damage off on them. Absolutely amazing. For Poco, and you may have guessed it, it's definitely hitting your entire team with your super. Every time I do this, I just feel like such a good teammate to them, and it's definitely relieving. The most satisfying thing about Rosa is watching an enemy go into a nearby bush when you know that you can use your gadget to slow them, catch up to them, and take them down. Now for Jessie, there are surely many things to choose from, but if I were to pick, the absolute most satisfying thing would definitely be dropping my super on top of the enemy safe and using a gadget to speed up its attack. Next up is Dynamite, and I thought of this one because I'm usually on the opposite end of this interaction, and that is having an 8-bit as an opponent. 8-bit is a super easy target for Dynamite on account of his very slow speed, and let's face it, we all want easy targets in this game. Next up is Tick, and for him it's easily going to be blowing people up with your super, especially when you drop it against a very close range brawler when there's pretty much nothing they can do about it. 8-bit is up next, and it would only make sense to say that the best thing to do as him is drop your super, use your gadget, and melt the high save. The most satisfying thing about Rico is his ability to take even the slightest break from combat and fully restore his health using just one ammo with the Bounty Castle gadget. Before I share this one, I will say that in most cases it provides no strategic advantage. But for Daryl, I find the most satisfying thing to be using a super across water. And that's it. I just like to give him a longer roll. As for Penny, and I guess I have to use New Penny, but still, the most satisfying thing will just be dropping her super and using the gadget to make it rain on the enemies. Carl definitely has a lot of choices as to what is the most satisfying thing about him, but I have decided that it's gotta be when you just barely make contact with your attack and you get 2 quick hits off of an enemy. Doing this in Top Dog is even better. The most satisfying thing to do when playing as Jackie is what I call a shoot and drill shot. It's difficult to set up but easy to perform, and all you have to do is shoot the ball and immediately tap your super, and that will clear the path and almost always score. The most satisfying thing for Gus also comes from my lack of aim, and that is when I actually hit one of my allies with the super balloon thing. It makes me feel like a good teammate when I'm able to land my super on them. Now, the most satisfying thing about Bo is definitely more of a toxic trait for me, and that is dropping his mines in just the spot that will ruin the opponent's day. Also, it's fun when your super randomly fills up and you know that you blew somebody up. Now, this one may be disagreed upon, but I found that the most satisfying thing about Ems is her ability to abuse her through-the-walls gadget in Top Dog Showdown. I mean, look at this one. It's using all 3 gadgets just to ruin one person's game. I mean, for Stu, it's pretty simple. The most satisfying thing is the fact that he's able to pretty much have his super the entire game. That is, if you play him right. Piper's was actually hard to choose from, but I have decided that the most satisfying thing about playing her is bring people down in knockout. And this is not what I meant by that. As for Pam, I think the most satisfying thing about her has gotta be her Scrap Sucker gadget and approaching an enemy and just draining all their ammo. It's always great to hit them with that attack and know that they won't be able to shoot back for a moment. The most satisfying thing about Frank is bringing him into Brawl Ball and using his super. He can destroy all the walls that protect them and keep them trapped at spawn for a little bit. As for Baby, I absolutely love her ability to run fast. She can approach enemies pretty easily in battle, and she is super fun to play as a result of her fast speed. Next up is B, and the most satisfying thing for her is when you slow the enemies and you know that they are screwed. Anyone who's played B before knows how great it feels when the enemy is slowed and you're about to drill them with a supercharged shot. Next up is Nanny, and I think we can agree on the fact that the absolute best thing is when you're twirling your super around the map and then you just one-shot the enemy because you're using the autofocus star power. Trolling with the return to sender gadget is a very close second. Next we have Edgar, and honestly I don't really play him that much, but if I do, I can imagine the best thing would be getting all the power cubes in Showdown. I mean, it seems to happen a lot, right? Griff has one of the deadliest supers in the game, and as a result, I think the most satisfying thing about using him is opening up the map and then shredding the enemy team with his super. It seems to work on a large amount of maps, and I absolutely love it. The most satisfying thing about Grom is definitely one of the hardest to do, and that would be landing the triple shot that you get from his gadget. I mean, in most occasions, if you make full contact with one of these attacks, the enemies will be taken down. And of course, it's amazing to bring someone down with just 1 ammo. Now, I never really used Bonnie to begin with, but I think that the most satisfying thing about her is using her super at full distance and landing on an enemy and then just taking them down. The most satisfying thing about Mortis... if you ask any Mortismen, they'll say team wipe. The most satisfying thing about Terra, and it's a little difficult to do, but that would be getting the entire enemy team in one Black Portal super. It is perhaps one of the easiest team wiping abilities that you can pull off. It's definitely fun to grab anyone with Jean's super, but I find it most satisfying whenever I'm able to steal the gem carrier in Gem Grab, and sometimes make them crash into painful objects. The most satisfying thing about Max doesn't even require you to play as her, but instead when you have a teammate who is Max and they use their super next to you and you get that movement speed, that right there is the most satisfying thing she can bring to you. Now, I sat here for a while thinking of something for Mr. P and I just couldn't come up with one. But I did come up with this, and anyone who plays without volume cannot relate. But his Porter sound effects are like music to my ears, and that is what I think is the most satisfying thing about him. Now, the most satisfying thing about Sprout is not just using its super, but using the gadget to bring your super back and relocate it if you're in trouble. It's an amazing ability, and I absolutely love using it every time I need to. Say what you want about this one, the absolute most satisfying thing about Byron is his voice lines. He was built with amazing character, and I will spam his pins the entire game just to hear what he has to say.
Sign here with your life.
The most satisfying thing about Squeak is definitely a rare occasion, but that would be landing his super on everything. I mean, sure, it's easy to land it on a still target like a safe, but if you can get it on an enemy and take him down instantly, it always feels great. The most satisfying thing about Gray was once using his original grand piano gadget, but now that that's gone, I guess the only other option is his teleport, but nothing will ever compare to using that massive piano. The most satisfying thing about Willow, I ended up finding to be misuse of her super by trapping the enemies within the walls. I mean, honestly, you should try this. You probably saw this one coming. The most satisfying thing about Spike is getting some alone time with the save. His ability to break it in about 11 attacks is unbelievable. As for Crow, the most satisfying thing, and you can probably agree on this, is when you finally fill up his super. Given that it's one of the strongest supers in the game, it takes a lot of attacks to charge, and when you finally fill that yellow circle, it's always the best feeling for a Crow user. Next up is Leon, and I find the most satisfying thing about him to be the speed star power that makes him run really fast while invisible. I think it's fun how fast he can travel while invisible and how far away he can sneak up on people from. Now, what I find the most satisfying thing for Sandy is definitely evil. And it is trolling with his second gadget. And basically, no matter what the situation is, I will spin when I sleep the enemies with the gadget, and it's probably also the most toxic thing I do in the game altogether. As for Amber, I'm okay with just saying that the most satisfying thing is landing all her shots. Granted, it's satisfying landing all your shots no matter who you use, but since Amber has 40 individual ammo, I guess it just feels different. Now, the most satisfying thing about Meg is when you play Top Dog Showdown, you find another Meg, and then you take them out because you don't team. Now, Chester's almost too much a man of luck for this, but either way, I find it most satisfying if I can make full contact with this 4-shot attack, or get the super that I like. Moving on to the chromatics, we start with Gale, and the most satisfying thing about him is pushing an enemy into the wall and stunning them with the blustery blow star power. This usually results in an easy takedown. Next up we have Surge, and I want to say that the most satisfying thing about him is upgrading to stage 3. That's right, I'm not a big fan of stage 4, it's not too much of a difference, but the movement speed applied from stage 2 and the range buff put on in stage 3 is definitely so relieving to get. Especially since Surge starts off slow and weak, the transformation always feels very nice. As for Colette, her most satisfying thing is definitely easy if you play the right game mode, and that is simply finding the high HP enemy. It's always lovely when you approach a Rosa or an El Primo or a Frank and you know that your first attack is going to do a few thousand damage. Lose is also somewhat easy, and that is simply throwing your super into the hot zone so the enemy team has to suffer if they want to win. As for Colonel Ruffs, all of us good teammates out there can definitely relate to saying that the most satisfying thing about him is using field promotion on your duo's partner. I mean, seriously, who doesn't want a 10,000 HP tick on their team? Yet again, I'm gonna mention my terrible aim before I say this one. The most satisfying thing about Belle is hitting someone with your super, knowing that they're stuck with that mark until they're either gone or until I guess you mark someone else. As for Buzz, the most satisfying thing is connecting with your super and watching yourself pull into them and they get stunned, and you usually get a takedown depending on who you've done it to. And honestly, longer range hits always seem a bit more satisfying, I don't know why, but overall Buzz is one of the only brawlers where I'm able to completely wipe out a showdown match with. Ash is another brawler where I've got to say the most satisfying thing about him is of course his voice lines. Besides that, I will say though that one of my favorite things is also having his rage full while I have high HP, because it gives you a lot more opportunities to rush people with high damage and a slightly faster speed. Next up is Lola, and I think that the most satisfying thing about her is when you drop your ego right at your feet and then hit all your shots because you have 2 Lolas. I mean, honestly, any game mode, most players drop their egos at their feet. Even though the second one does less damage, there's still a lot of projectiles to hit the enemies. Now, I love how fast Fang's super is, and as a result, I think the most satisfying thing about him is the classic super stun combo. Especially in Showdown, this is a very powerful move because you can approach the enemy, you'll stun them, and then you basically kick them until they're power cubes. I'm not a big fan of Eve, and I don't care too much about winning with Eve, but I will say that the most satisfying thing about her is the ability to float over water. If I ever select her, my only objective is to just float around over the water because she serves no other purpose to me. Janet's another brawler that I don't care too much about winning with, but I will say the most satisfying thing about her is definitely flying around with her super because it is pretty cool. Oh, and she does have some pretty good voice lines. Otis is amazing. I will say that his voice lines are one of the most satisfying things about him, as he's just awesome to listen to. And I also will say that it is super satisfying to trap enemies with the super gadget combo, watching them get silenced just by taking a few wrong steps. Sam is another brawler where I can just run around the showdown match and punch everyone and defeat them all. And I think that one of the most satisfying things to do as Sam is fill up his super the second time and retract his fist back to him because it's actually somewhat hard to do, but also a very fun move to use. Next up we have Buster, and I'd like to say that the most satisfying thing about using him is using his super while inside a bush and tricking the enemies. Because they can't see your super, they might end up damaging themselves. Mandy's is simple because I have no other way to put it. I just like to hit enemies with her super. It fills halfway upon contact and does massive damage, enough to the point where I don't even really like using her regular attack. I think that the former Jackie man in me has to say that the most satisfying thing about RT is taking his second form and floating around hitting enemies with his Jackie-like attack. Last but not least, we have Maisie, and I want to say that the most satisfying thing about her is using her finish him gadget on a really low health enemy and seeing how high the damage number can reach. Anyways, that is the most satisfying thing about all 67 brawlers in the game. That's all I have for today. Thank you very much for sticking to the end, and I will see you later. Peace out. The classic Brawl Pass that we once knew had a total of 21 seasons, all of which had their fair share of ups and downs. So here is the best and worst thing that happened in all of them. And so, in Season 1, the Brawl Pass came about. The best thing about this season is simply the brand new track of all sorts of rewards players can now claim just by existing or doing quests. The worst thing though would be the fact that there was only 60 tiers that we would be progressing through, but we wouldn't realize that we're at a loss until long after the season was over. The best thing about Season 2 would then be more rewards. After becoming more familiar with this Brawl Pass, we now get an additional 10 tiers added to the season, so it feels more fulfilling even if it didn't necessarily increase our progression. The worst thing though would end up being this unique new weekend game mode they gave us called Super City Rampage. I don't really know how to describe the objective, but like, everyone hated it. Next up we had Season 3, and the best part about this season is, well, this.
We are also getting a Star Park team tutorial so we can welcome new players to the Star Park.
This was the beginning of what would become a series of very interesting content that we would know as the Star Park lore. This would later be picked up by a lot of content creators such as Ray and Michael, and the community as a whole would do as much as possible to figure out what is going on. The worst thing is just Colette. Upon her release, she couldn't break anything, not even a porter, with her regular attack. It was bad. A bit later came Season 4, and the best part about this season is that this was the time that we would all begin to see the map maker that we have today, which was a lot more developed and now had maps that you could actually submit to be the winning map of the day. This allowed players' creativity to thrive, as they would now have the ability to let the whole world see the maps that they made. The worst part about Season 4 was the Edgar Apocalypse. Edgar was released on December 19th of 2020, and he was free to claim to everyone, the whole world, all at once. To no surprise, he immediately found his permanent purpose in showdowns, especially solos, where tons of players would be playing Edgar at the same time, and he was just everywhere. It was awful. The best part about Season 5 was not doing this.
Uh-oh, it seems we got a replacement.
It seems that the new Brawler kit has been replaced by
They spared us for quite a while, luckily. The worst part of Season 5 would then be the release of Stu. Why was it so bad, you may ask? Well, he was literally released with knockback. That meant that if you were Frank, then you were gonna have a bad time. He would knock you back and forth all day, and he made it really hard to land an attack depending on who you were. The best thing they did during Season 6 was making Knockout permanent. In the June 16th of 2021 update, Knockout was ruled as super awesome and made a permanent game mode. However though, it was that season that the one and only Ryan told us that his time with Brawl Stars was coming to an abrupt end, and that would be the final Brawl Talk that Ryan would be the star of. But luckily for him, he's off to bigger and better. Season 7 came next, and it was an amazing season. It was the first full season with Knockout as a full-time mode. It had a very balanced schematic, and the game started seeing amazing new changes. The best feature? The bad randoms. This introduced a musical piece that was available outside of Brawl Stars itself, and you'd see musical releases on platforms like YouTube and even Spotify. The worst thing? Bad randoms. This season was so amazing that the worst thing I could think of was the actual players, or just some of them. Here's some 2021 footage of a bad random named Goblin. Season 8 welcomed us with Ash, as well as rewards for all tiers of the Brawl Pass. We would finally see a day where there was a beautiful clan box for every tier we progressed to during that season. Pretty cool, right? Season 8 was also our time to prepare for the new club feature that was on its way, and it was during that season that players were instructed to shorten their club length to 30 players from the original 100 in order to fit an upcoming update. Season 9 came with a lovely new boost to progression when the November of 2021 update gave us Club League. You could now do a few matches every week to give your club a rank and unlock these lovely new club coins that could be used to redeem all sorts of rewards. This made upgrading brawlers much easier. Season 9 also gave us gears. Sure, they're okay now, but back at their origin, gears were hated by a lot of the community. They were a great idea, but unfortunately delivered very poorly, and the Brawl Stars community made sure that the devs knew that. Season 10 came along next with Fang, who everyone loved. Surely enough, Fang was the best thing that was brought to us by Season 10. He's only a little bit extremely broken now, but that doesn't stop the community from playing and loving Fang. This season was wonderful with a great environment, but unfortunately it was a lot shorter. The worst thing about Season 10 was, of course, its short duration, but that was done in order to set the remainder of Brawl Pass seasons to have a continuous 2-month period, and Season 10 just had to make a little sacrifice for that to be possible. Season 11 was pretty bland, but it did bring us a Power League rework in April that would hopefully make competitive Brawl Stars an easier experience for users, which was probably the best thing that the whole season had. As for the worst though, Bot Drop became a game mode in the same update, and it was not a good, legitimate game mode to play if you wanted to make some real trophies, and I don't think it was liked by that many people. Season 12 was the stunt show, and in the late June update, we saw the first of Club Quests. Club Quest was the second half of Club League that would be a lot more easy and pleasant for casual players, and it was still nearly as rewarding as Club League itself. Season 12 also introduced us to Hunters, though, which was discussed in the pre-Season 13 Brawl Talk and introduced to us at the end of Season 12 itself. We would then be stuck with it as a game mode for the entire next season. Next up, we have what is perhaps the most disliked season of all time. Season 13 didn't really have anything too unique to be added, and honestly the best things about the season were A, the theme, and B, the end. The theme was so nice to look at, and it had some pretty great music, but that's pretty much all players had to look forward to in the season, and as you can imagine, that's not very good. Sorry, Otis. The worst thing about Season 3, and this is just solely my opinion, was the permanent removal of Siege. Even though it did come back, at the time there was no foresight of such an occasion, as it was deleted from Map Maker from there on out, only existing as a memory. This removal did look permanent, but either way it was done so to prepare the game for the Robot Factory season. Season 14 then came about, and it held one of the most popular changes to the game's functionality, the gear rework. In this October 2022 update, they finally reworked gears as a whole, which I think just about everyone loved. This gave us a large sum of coins, which enabled us to do a lot of spending on the most essential part of the game, buying true gold skins. I'm kidding, I really hope you spent these on upgrades. The worst thing Season 14 brought us would honestly just be the new button that allowed players to buy gadgets and star powers with coins. Why was that bad? The feature wasn't bad, it was amazing, but as you can imagine, it was done as a prep for the removal of Brawl Boxes. The best thing brought about by Season 15 is fame. Wait, it's not fame? Okay, everyone, the best thing about Season 15 was the Star Road. This gave us 2 new currencies that would surely be part of the game for a long time, since they're brand new, and they allowed players to have a bit more of a selection as to who they wanted to unlock next. You could also save credits instead of boxes, which guaranteed the unlock of the newest brawler on the first day of their release. Any extra credits would go to fame! Look how valuable this little planet image is. The worst thing would of course be the removal of boxes. The once beloved feature with an occasional glowy red one would be eliminated from the game, entirely removing the luck factor from it, all the way until Chester was released 0 days later. Everyone loved Brawl Boxes, but sadly that didn't stop them from just becoming a thing of the past. We then went into Season 16, and the best thing about that season would be Mastery. Mastery was brought to us in the February 2023 update that would prepare us for Season 17, and it gave players so much more purpose to play any brawler, rather than just for trophies or whatever else the game rewarded. You got new player cards and all sorts of other things that you could use to flex on other players, and let's face it, getting mastery on brawlers is honestly like the best thing ever. The worst thing that season brought us was, Ray cover your ears, Creature of the Night. I mean, come on, it's overused. Here's a speedrun of me trying to find a Creature of the Night title. Next we had Season 17, and it gave us Bling, because, well, it was released in April of 2023, in the update that would set us up for the Maisie season. Either way, Bling was yet another perfect feature for the free-to-play players, as it allowed them to actually be able to afford a few more skins with their limited resources, and possibly make their favorite brawler look just a bit better. However, this update had to reorder skin rarities, and with this move, the 49 gem skins were no longer 49 gems. But it's worth it, right? It was a necessary move to make something perfect. Season 18 came next, and it had an update that brought back something the Brawl Stars community had been craving: the luck factor. That's right, Star Drops came out in June. Feel old yet? This was towards the end of Season 18, but it allowed the season to finish off as a hero, once again allowing players to get lucky with things, even getting skins and cosmetics just by winning a match. Unfortunately though, since Season 18 was the first full season with Bling, we had a Bling reward replace the Tier 1 Brawl Pass sides reward that had once been a free skin. Even though it was a lot of Bling, Season 18 and all following seasons would not have a Tier 1 skin. Season 19 gave us Cordelius, and it also let us see something huge that was about to be added for the next season's Chromatic and many other brawlers: Hypercharge. In early September of 2023, Hypercharge was added to a few brawlers as part of collector's packs, and we'd be able to see what this news feature is right before Season 20 began. That same update also doubled the effect of upgrading any brawler. This didn't have any fundamental changes to matches where everyone was maxed, but it still had some getting used to since everyone now has new numbers. Don't worry, it still turned out to be a great feature. Season 20 gave us Pearl and the first full season with Hypercharges, as well as Mega Pig. Although it wasn't played and experienced till a little bit later, it still existed and was in the game as of October 2023, which would fall under Season 20. I mean, what else did the season offer? But with the introduction of Mega Pig, this was the goodbye of Club League and all the selective upgradable stuff. Instead of getting to choose what your rewards are, they were now changed into completely random prizes, such as random profile pictures or sprays for brawlers you just don't use. Season 21 would be the final season of the classic Brawl Pass, and its best new feature, or at least what I like the most, is 5v5. No matter the mode, 5v5 has proven itself to be a very fun event to play and just the best thing Brawl Stars has given us since early November when Season 21 kicked off. The worst thing though is something that they allowed to occur 3 times: broken brawlers. First, they gave us the final Chromatic, who was a broken Spider-Woman who was way too strong. Then they nerfed her and replaced her brokenness with a broken Monkey Brawler who was also way too strong. Then, instead of nerfing him, they added a broken Kitty Brawler who of course was way too broken. Also, the broken Kitty Brawler who's way too broken, he's not for the broke players. At least not yet. And anyways, my friends, there you have it. That is the entirety, I think, of the classic Brawl Pass seasons. Thank you very much for sticking to the end, and I will see you next time. Here is where all 72 Brawler Mastery icons actually come from. Shelly's is literally just her weapon with a kinda nice background. In other words, it's the last thing you see before this happens to you. Nita's is a bear face, and judging by the nose structure, it's actually the one on top of her head and not the bear standing behind her. Colt's is bullets, and the best thing I noticed about them is that if you give a little attention to detail, they are silver bullets. Bull's is easy, it's literally just that thing on his belt. Rock's is his rocket launcher coming from this angle, and it has a nice background. Primo's icon is simply a close-up of the belt he's wearing. Barley's icon is simply just his fine-looking bow tie. Poco's is a close-up shot of his eye while he's singing or winking or something, and I want to say, based off of the angle, that it's his left eye. Rosa's icon comes from a plant thing on her back. Where that extra leaf came from, I don't know. Jesse's icon is her turret, and it has all of its features except for the dog tag that's supposed to be on it. For Dynamite, it's just the bird in his helmet. Pix is just his head, but in this angle, it's on top of you and probably about to blow you up. 8-Bit's icon is his face, but it's from a really close angle as if he's standing on top of you. Rico's is just his eye. Daryl's is that goofy pirate logo on his hat. Penny's is that skull thing that's on her headband, except in the icon it has a crack on it. Carl's is an intense looking shot of him driving his cart, and is that a nose? Jackie's is that happy looking drill logo that's on her helmet, except in the icon it's actually drilling. Gus's is the face of the balloon that goes off screen at the end of his animations. Bo's icon is some angle of his quiver, but I'm gonna be critical here and say that in his brawler model there's 4 4 arrows, and in the icon there's only 3. Ems's icon actually kind of stumped me. It's like it's similar to the shape of her bag, but it's coming out of her perfume smoke. Stu's is basically this racing logo thing, and it's found all over him. Piper's is a shot of her gunbrella, specifically at this moment, but it still does have its scope out. Pam's is that big, strong, meaty arm. Frank's is that ripped tie and pretty much just a close-up shot of his chest. BB's icon comes from the back of her jacket, where it's just that baseball logo. B's is an above shot of her head where it kinda just shows her bee helmet. Remember that dog tag that Jesse's icon didn't have? Well, Nanny has it dangling from her right arm, and that's her mastery icon. Edgar's icon comes from his gift shop uniform. Wait, is that the Star Park logo? Griff's is composed of the corner structures of his head thingy, as well as the border, and then just has a coin in the middle. Grom's is just a simple front shot of his outfit. Bonnie's icon is an angle of her cannon at this moment right before it fires. Hank's icon is just a side view of his helmet with a really nice background. Mortis's icon is pretty lame. It's literally just the bat that's on his front side. Tara's is her psychic eye thingy that's on her forehead, and it's staring right at you. Gene won't stop dancing, but basically his icon is the moon that's on his forehead. Max's icon is the lightning zipper on her outfit, but all the other colors, they're dimmed out. Mr. P's icon is simply his porter towering over you. Sprouts is a close-up of its face. Byron's is actually not the head of his staff, but rather the little logo on his belt. Squeak's is just his globby head. Gray's is plainly him holding his cane. Willow's icon is the lantern that she's holding, but it's active as if it's about to curse someone. Doug's icon is the glizzy that it's holding, but it's given a nice background as if it's the one that's on his hat. Chuck's icon is the massive skull that's on the back of his brawler model. Spike's mastery icon is, let me just show you. Crow's icon is his dagger, and it looks like it's about to just plunge right into something. Leon's icon is his face, or at least the parts of it that we can see. Sandy's icon is the big sleepy star that's on his forehead. Amber's mastery icon is her fire belt buckle. Meg's mastery icon actually kind of has me stumped. It's close to the logo that's on her hat, except I can't really find it anywhere, and it kind of just looks like a button that would change her form. Chester's icon is actually kind of funny. It's the side of his box that faces his back. In other words, it's very hidden. Gale's icon is literally just his hat. Surge's icon isn't actually found anywhere on his brawler model, but as you know, you can see it on the battlefield. Colette's icon is a close-up of her face with what is probably the little spike that's sticking out of her book. Lou's icon is the cone that he's holding, except they just gave it a face. Ruff's icon is that sweet logo right on his hat. Belle's icon is a close-up of her face with that gold tooth shining on you. Buzz's icon is just his angry looking whistle. Ash's icon is a bit of that trash that's on top of his head. If you look closely, you can even see what parts. Lola's icon, her diamond necklace. Fang's is the popcorn thing that's on his headband, but if you notice, it's the same exact shape as the popcorn that he's holding. Eve's icon is just one of her babies, and if you look closely, one of the pictures in her cabin looks exactly like her icon. Janet's icon is simple, it's just the microphone thing that she's holding. Otis's icon is him winking. Sam's icon, it's just a side view of his fist and his knuckle thing. Buster's icon looks like his head just hiding behind his super. I mean, you can see his face. Mandy's icon is the crown that's on top of her weapon and not her head, and you can tell if you look closely at the finer detail. RT's is like the lower half of his body when he split, except those eye structures are red. Maisie's icon is the no fire logo, and it can be found on the side of her right arm cannon. I swear Cordelius's has changed. I wanted to say that it was the little logo on his weapon, but they're not the same anymore. But they're still identifying structures. And finally, well, it's just Earl giving you a thumbs up with her heart mitten. And anyways, that's all. If you haven't noticed, this was kind of like a speedrun attempt, so I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for sticking to the end. Here's your members. I'll see you later. I got a mysterious invite the other day from a player who wanted to show me something pretty interesting. That's right, it was the last day of Wasabi Powers, and he wanted to show me that you could actually mix and match them in friendly battle duels. Now, the way it works is basically, your first brawler's power would be applied to the whole team, which gave us a whole new world of possibility. So here's every brawler with a circle super. And first on the list was Nita, so just have a listen. Next on the list was Colt, and I guess he just doesn't know how to make a circle super work. Either way, this one was pretty cool to watch. Bull, get ready for this one. Yeah, I'm disappointed. Brock turns into a fountain with this one, and it looks magnificent. His hypercharge, not so much. When El Primo lands, I promise something cool will happen. Don't let Sullivan catch me doing this one. I'm scared of what he'd have to say. Honestly, they should just make Poco do this anyways. But even in a full circle, his supers won't stack. What's better than one Jesse turret? One Jesse turret. Rumor has it, if you don't use code Jimbo, Dynamite will come do this to your house. And when you throw it by your feet, he makes a flower. Let's see what happens if I Dyna Jump. Wow, look at all that Money. Look at all that money. Are we gonna talk about how the Hyperhead doesn't spawn any Hyper Mines? For 8-bit, the spawning sound matches up with all the turrets landing, and it's really cool. For Hyper 8-bit, it's the same thing, except the turrets aren't Hyper. Imagine 3 of these Ricos versus a heist safe. Daryl's did nothing, right? The fact that the idiot who made this didn't use Master Blaster makes me upset. Wait, the idiot's me? Imagine if Carl did his spin and super in a circle. How would that even look? Bo's Wasabi power gives him infinite mines. What happens when you give him Shelly's Wasabi power? He gets 0 mines. Piper does nothing. Pam throws in a ton of egg healers really quickly, and that thing looks sweet. How can she afford all those eggs in this economy? This custom Frank Super is unlike anything you've ever seen before. Have a look. This Hyper Super is also something I've never seen before. I wish Wasabi Power still existed because surviving this would be a really fun minigame. Alright, I'll give you 3 seconds to decide. Which Peep is the real Peep? Do you have your pick? Pay close attention. B. Imagine if that was Grip's Hypercharge. Back in his day, Gale used to knock himself back with his super. I wonder where he'd go now. I really hope Grom doesn't want revenge on the children. And now I pray that I'm not on his bad side. This is like the ego of an Edgar main. And now here's the same joke, except it's hypercharged. That's gonna leave a mark or 10, you decide. Ash says run free my Wee Beasties, but the Wee Beasties in question just did blow up. They don't run. They should make this one real so then Moyo never misses a Mandy super again. Because believe me, I guarantee you he would find a way. You've heard of twins, now get ready for, Triaconta Kayak sublets. This one sounds heavenly. The Mortis one's kinda scary because just remember, it pierces everything. Pay close attention and tell me what Terra's missing. I like how the Hyper Supers still couldn't destroy the rest of the map. Byron would take healing and damaging to the extreme. Amazingly enough, if he hit 4 of them, he would just recharge that super. This one was handy. Sprout's wall kind of looks like a giant donut. This makes me hungry. Sprout's Hyper Wall looks like that. Squeaks is one of my favorites, but it is really, really weird. Hyper Squeaks is even better, but worse. Where did all the balls go? Ruffs, I so wish they all spawn power-ups. Oh my gosh, this one literally makes South Park come to not this. Oh my gosh, this one literally makes South Park come to life. Buzz! He goes to the last thing he hits, which is kind of funny. Eve, I guess we found the limit on how many egg nests she can spawn. Same with the hypercharge. Enjoy this random stampede of cells. Willow! I wonder what happened if she could mind control multiple targets at once. But since it's duels, we'll never find out. My obsession with wieners makes me envy that place where that Shelly stands. Janet Super drops bombs everywhere and it's chaotic and it's really fun. Chuck now throws a bunch of train posts that don't land. And I mean it, they don't. He can't win. I wonder how many spiders this will spawn. Oh, none. Here's Lily's Hyper Super, which looks kind of weird on the outside because they all just disappear. And here it is with Repot. Clancy, that would destroy the MOBA. Juju, she only gets 1 Gree. Loomies is the most confusing one by far. Out of all of them, this is the only one I cannot give an explanation for. Sadly, Finks's, they sound cool, but none of the effects stack. Poop Spike leaves behind a nasty splatter and look at all those flies. His Hyper Super is pretty okay. Sandy's sounds angelic, just listen. It also, Root Sands doesn't work anymore. Amber's covers the whole map with icy fluid. Pretty interesting. And Hypercharged Amber is that screenshot worthy because you cannot see anything on the floor. Pretty sick. There's a circle of Chester Poison M Super, there's a circle of Chester Stun Supers, and there's a circle of Chester Hyper Supers. Cordelius is Cordelius. And Kenji! Kenji's? It looks pretty cool, but guess what? Only one of the supers works! Kenji's finally not OP! Even his hypercharge isn't broken! There's Kaze. And of course Kaze again. Kaze is cool. In 2017, Brawl Stars made its first public appearance as a 3v3 Wild West game with a simple roster of 15 basic brawlers. Today, there are 82 84 brawlers in total, and the latest 15 brawlers have concepts that are, well, a lot more developed. And so, I gathered the first 15 brawlers as well as the newest 15 brawlers to engage in an epic 10 rounds Olympics to see which roster is truly better. The first challenge the teams will be playing is a bot takedown challenge. They will be performing a relay style race against the bot until all 15 brawlers take it down. Shelly gets to start off strong for Team Classic with a large burst of damage thanks to her hypercharge restoring most of her supercharge on each hit. Once the hypercharge runs out though, she slows down a lot. Holt gets to basically spam supers almost the whole time, given that full contact just refills his super. And since his super does a lot of damage, he makes 100,000 damage a pretty easy task. Bull gets to use Berserker but not the damage gear since no one else got it. His close range damage is terrifyingly high, so he was able to make 100,000 damage a relatively easy task. Brock probably had it in his best interest to just spam supers like so. We tried him a few various ways, but this one was the fastest. Rico has so many damage dealing abilities. Even with his gadget's nerf, he still crushed the bot like it was nothing. This challenge is basically the optimal play for Spike to be making. His hypercharged Storm of Needles did 100,000 damage fast. Barley basically just gets some extra noxious attacks and other slow damage dealing abilities which causes them to take a relatively long time. Jessie gets carried by her turret. She alone doesn't do very fast damage, but the hypercharged and boosted turret did some pretty solid work for her. Nita was in the same boat as Jessie. Luckily, Bruce came out ready to do some work and they scored a pretty decent time. Dynamite doesn't hesitate to crush the bot thanks to his hyper demolition super. He kinda gets to harass the big bot with his even bigger boom. El Primo's big, strong muscles hit the bot top to bottom, and I guess he also just gets to hit it with meteors and stuff, which make it go down a little bit faster. The Classic team has 4 brawlers left to go, and unfortunately for them, this one is Mortis. He takes forever to finish the job because unfortunately for him, this event took place in like July. He did not have a hypercharge yet. Not as fast as Crow though, he does it fast. But Poco, yeah, he should probably never try to be a one-man band. Bo is the final Classic brawler and he does take a little while to finish the task, but he at least had his minds to add a significant impact on his time. Hank starts off strong for Team Modern, really strong. Cordelius then takes a turn for the worse as the only real help he has is combo shrooms. Other than that, it's pretty much just his hypercharge that raises his damage. Doug steps down even more because as much as you hate to hear it, his Glizzy does not deal any damage, no matter how hard you try. After 3 brawlers, Team Modern is already pretty far behind Team Classic. Pearl finally goes to do something right, and it was found that weirdly enough, using 1 ammo and then a super did the quickest takedown for her. And it was pretty quick if you ask me. Chuck luckily just gets to spam his supers. A lot of them too. Charlie gets to cocoon the boss initially, but unfortunately she can't speed up the time it takes the cocoon to hatch. That kind of hurts her time a little bit, but she later got back to speed thanks to her spiders. Miko takes a long time because of his really low reload speed, but luckily for him, Record Smash does get to double his output on the big robot, otherwise Team Modern would be in a really bad place. Kit already finds a task to lose at as there is no brawler to spam supers on or power cubes to empower himself with, and this results in him being limited with just claws to finish the job. Larry, interestingly enough, has this fastest time by placing multiple lorries because even though you can't see it, Lori has ammo and spawning a fresh lorry gives him all 3 ammo back. Melody just gets to trot in circles around the bot hoping that her music notes can hit it fast enough. Spoiler alert, they don't. Her time was in the higher middle range. Angelo starts off with a charged attack and 1 super, and then his objective is to shoot more fully charged attacks and slowly but surely get more and more supers on the ground. Draco can mark the bot initially, and then in his next 5 seconds he has an extra 35% chaos. After that, it's in his best interest to just stay in dragon mode. Lily is probably the most basic out of all for Team Modern. She does her attacks until her super's full and then just uses it. That's all. Barry's attacks unfortunately don't stack like Barley's, but the impacts still do some pretty solid damage. And using nothing but ice cream, he takes the bot down in 36 seconds. Clancy comes in with a super that was used before the balance changes and he absolutely shreds the bot, finishing the challenge for Team Modern. And after the first challenge, Team Classic's total time was 6 minutes 47 seconds, and Team Modern's total time was 7 minutes 29 seconds. And just like that, Team Classic wins the first challenge. The second challenge is very similar to the first, except instead of 1 big bot, they're now focused on the swarm. So Cold's piercing linear projectiles are able to do some serious damage. Bull does something similar, except with 2 back and forth dashes that perfectly destroy 2 columns each. Brock almost clears the swarm with 2 supers, but there will still be 2 bots left that need a rocket in their face for him to finish. Rico plays it similar to Colt. It's his fastest way. Spike comes in clutch with his hypercharge, giving him a bigger super. Barley's hypercharge almost takes the bots down on its own, while Jessie had to carefully play the opposite end of her turret to ensure the fastest run. Nita is almost better at Bruce for this challenge since she can hit numerous enemies at once. Dynamite's fidget spinner does work. El Primo does a meteor, a careful super, and then another super, and then just punches whatever's left. Mortis does a super dash super combo. Crow just needs his super and 1 attack. Same with Poco, but he's faster. And then Bo does it slower than most of his team. Maybe he's gotta work on that. For Team Modern, Hank starts off with a big bubble, and then he has some strategically placed supers that will do the rest of the job. Cordelius one-shots 2 bots, but only when his hypercharge is active. As a result, he does take quite a while. Doug comes in like a record breaker. Pearl does so too, but she looks a lot cooler while doing it, and Chuck does a circle train run through all but the middle, but then he smokes the last 2 out. Charlie has to carefully hit the last bot in each row so the retraction damage can pierce all of the bots in the row. Nico is pretty slow, but he manages to do some weird splash pattern to hit everybody, hit claws everyone, but much quicker than he did the previous time. The twins effectively split the task like any ideal twins would. Melody just slowly walks through the swarm and K-pop pops the bots. Angelo uses a combination of 1 piercing attack and then some deadly super poison to finish the rest off. Reiko's regular attack is way too small to make an impact, so it's not really worth using, and because of that, he does most of the work in his dragon. Lily uses her super like an ender pearl to get her from one end to the other after she pokes the first corner of bots. Barry was actually hiding in the background during Bull's trial because he decided to straight up copy him. Clancy then finished off doing something similar but not similar to Melody. And in the end, Team Classic took just over 45 seconds, while Team Modern took 1:19 seconds. And Team Classic wins again, almost taking half of the time Team Modern took. And now we move on to the third challenge that requires no damage at all, a relay race. Shelly basically just gets her dash gadget, while Colt just ran fast. Brawlers for this race will have to travel about 21 tiles in total, and the exact frame that the slow tile hits them, the next brawler starts. Bull gets not only a bulldozer, but also the little boost from his hypercharge. Brock gets almost no help, as he only has his hypercharge speed and rocket laces to help him in the end. Rico gets to run really fast though, mostly thanks to his Robo Retreat star power that we almost never see in battle. Spike gets nothing but a hypercharge. This all applies to Barley, Jessie, and Nita, who all take about 7 seconds each. Dynamite gets a very slight boost from Dyna jumping forward, and it also just looks super cool and skilled. El Primo finally gets to break the slow streak with a far jump and a fast speed after he lands, and then 1 brawler later, El Primo loses his record to Mortis, who dashes and destroys in 4.1 seconds. Pro gets to jump far for the first half, and then he has to run the rest of it, but at the end, Team Classic has to rely on Poco and Bo, who at the time of recording did not have hypercharges, so while we watch them finish up, just go comment you forgot Poco's hypercharge. That wraps up Team Classic's trial, and Team Modern begins with Hank, who only gets to move fast when his bubble is very charged, so he already starts off slow. Cordelius gets to kind of go fast while hypercharged and in the Shadow Realm. Whatever floats his boat, I guess. Doug is useless. Well, not that useless, but yeah, useless. Pearl gets hypercharge speed and nothing more, but then next is Chuck, who flies through it all. And that forces Charlie to go next, but she's just a runner. Then we have Mika, who's basically able to jump the whole course in not too much time, Hit, who hops once and then runs fast, Larry, who abuses his 1 gadget and speed runs through, Melody, who dashes 3 times to just barely make it, Angela, who operates better under flood conditions, Reiko, who does nothing helpful for his team, Lily, who throws her super and uses the Vigilance star power, Barry, whose super is pretty fast, and then finally, Clancy, who speed walks faster than most of the other brawlers. And in the end, Team Classic takes 1:33, while Team Modern takes 1:21. And so, Team Modern finally gets a point here, and we can probably thank their MVP for that. I hope you're ready to be satisfied, because the 4th challenge is none other than bones clearing. For Shelly, this was worth 72 skulls. For Colt, I decided that the gadget should be given its own attack, which in hindsight was probably a bad idea. Bull gets to charge and fire, but Stomp doesn't do anything, and he gets 55 skulls. Brock uses a non-hyper super with a gadget and attack, and he totals 83 skulls. Rico comes in with a record-breaking score. I gave him 1 wall to get some bounce points off with his hyper super, as well as a strong gadget and then a mediocre attack to give him more points, and he totaled exactly 300. Spike then matches the energy with a similar gadget, as well as a fine attack and super, and he totals 225 skulls. Barley has his skill basically limited to that hyper super, and he gets 120 skulls. Jessie then lets down Team Classic by only being able to get 18 skulls. Nita gets a measly 48 skulls. But then Dynamite does some work with his fidget spinner as well as his hyper super, and he ends up totaling 255 skulls. El Primo has pretty limiting attacks, but at least they leave circle-shaped holes. He totals 74 skulls. Mortis is terrible at this. He brings down Team Classic after all of his moves, only totaling 56 skulls destroyed. Crow makes up for everyone's mistakes though. Thanks to mainly his super, he clears 405 skulls for his team. Finally, we have Poco and Bo, where Poco does a little bit more damage thanks to his super and totals 94 skulls, whereas Bo isn't really able to do as much and he totals 45 skulls. As for Team Modern though, Hank starts them in a really good spot since his super milk goes far. He scored 315 skulls. Interestingly enough, Cordelius' super does break skulls. He got 32 skulls. Doug throws his meat into the Lucky Skulls faces and ends up totaling 55 skulls. Wish I was one of them. Pearl's gadget doesn't grant her any more area, and neither does her hypercharge. She stands in a crater the size of 62 skulls. Chuck kind of uses his train to clear some area, and then one attack also gets him a total of 72 skulls. Charlie gets her super itself as well as one attack to get 38 skulls. Miko does most of the work with his super, and after that a weak jump and kind of a gadget gets him a total of 47 skulls. Everyone laugh at Kit, he got 33. Larry and Lori combine their forces but still don't get too much area, ending up with 55 skulls broken. Melody, we gave her a really weird pattern of everything, but since there's too much variables to consider, we left her with a score of 153. Angelo got default movement speed for the duration of his super and one attack, and I think that's pretty fair. 108 skulls. Draco gets just one ammo because rules are rules. 39 skulls. Lily tried her best, but she didn't seem to be that successful. 26. Barry got 3 full abilities and 54 skulls broken as a result. And to finish off Team Modern, Clancy got the stand still for his super and fire off an attack, totaling 142 skulls. And after that, Team Classic got 1,910 skulls, and wow, Team Modern got 1,213. Classic absolutely swept. The 5th challenge is a knockout tournament. This is probably the only skill-based one, but that's fine because we need at least some head-to-head action. So right away, the Modern Brawlers start doing damage until Clancy does something stupid, but after all of that, the Classic Brawlers are pinned to the right side. Then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Brawlers fall, and it's down to Lily versus Shelly, and Lily has the inside of the map. So Lily beats Shelly, and then she beats her again in the second round. Clancy is foolish once more, and then Team Modern starts to gain another lead on Classic. In familiar circumstances, Lily wins the first match for Team Modern. So the second game brings us a whole new lineup, and Kit starts off making an okay play before safely retreating but still ending up at the top of the map. Kit leaves Melody for dead, and then he dies, but ultimately all 5 Classic Brawlers are taken down in the end. In the next round, I don't want to talk about it. Classic loses Nita first, and then there's just a long moment of pure chaos until Spike decides to check out early. After that, Dynamite lands the annoying gadget, but then he gets taken down. And finally, Larry claims the center territory of the map and pressures Team Classic into their demise to end the second match. There would have been a third tiebreaker match, but Team Modern's lead made it not needed. So we played it anyways, and Team Modern still won. And no thanks to me, Team Modern wins the 5th challenge. Now it's time to slow down the offense because the 6th challenge is all about survival. And so each team now has to survive the most storm ticks possible and no shield gears. Shelly just gets a little band-aid, and other than that, she survives for a solid 9 ticks. Colt has absolutely nothing but the 5% hypercharge shield, and that's just not gonna cut it, 6 ticks. Bull gets to use his super in a way that a few ticks reduce 80%, and after that he gets gadgets and a star power to let him live for 11 seconds. Brock has basically nothing and goes down in 6 seconds. Rico gets Bouncy Castle Mayhem, and this gives him a total of 10 seconds survival. Pretty good for low health. Spike gets his fertilized star power and as many cactus gadgets as he can drop before falling after a whopping 10 seconds of storm damage. Barley gets to toss a bunch of medical use attacks and herbal tonic gadgets, and he ultimately falls after 9 ticks. Jessie gets nothing once again and falls after 6 ticks. Nita gets Bear With Me, which serves her very well as she's able to out-heal the storm for the first few seconds before it ramps up. Eventually though, it deals too much damage and takes her down at 14 ticks. Dynamite gets to stay in the storm and look pretty, but only for 6 seconds. El Primo has a lot of health but not that much healing, and as a result he falls after 10 ticks to the storm. Mortis, the supposedly magnificent brawler, gets taken down after 9 ticks. Crow gets a gadget and a hypercharge to protect himself for a bit, but other than that he lasts 6 seconds. That's not long. Oko gets to heal himself in all sorts of ways, and because of that he survives for 12 of the storm's ticks. Finally, Bo has no special abilities and simply falls after 7 seconds. We then switch gears to Modern, where Hank gets to use Take Cover and Barricade to prolong his survival, as well as his super to restore a big chunk of his health right before he falls. He survives 13 total ticks. Cordelius gets the healing mushrooms from the Shadow Realm, and that's about it, but it's still enough to keep him alive for 9 ticks. Doug gets a lot of attacks and self-heal, as well as his self-revive, which lets him survive 15 seconds from the storm. Pearl kind of just has to look pretty and take damage, and she survives 8 seconds from the storm. Chuck slightly benefits from the damage reduction from being in motion, and this leads to him surviving 9 ticks. Charlie gets to self-cocoon herself 2 times before being taken down, and this allows her to survive 14 ticks of damage. Miko, her savage counterpart, gets to jump off screen right before he falls, and he ends up surviving a total of 13 ticks of damage. Kit jumped on another kit, and the bottom kit was used for our reference, and that bottom kit survived 8 seconds. Larry gets to send a little bit of damage to Lori, but that does not last long. After that, Larry falls after 8 ticks. Melody gets to shield herself with the power of a gadget, and she survives 9 ticks of storm damage. Angelo gets to heal himself with his zesty little super thing, but the healing is not that great because he gets taken down in just 9 seconds. Draco heals a little bit when he switches right to dragon mode, and then he manages to survive 13 ticks of damage from the storm. Lily doesn't really have that much going on for her, and she falls after 8 seconds of damage. Barry, even though he has all the heals in the world, is unable to survive more than 10 seconds from the storm because he just has such low health. And finally, we have Clancy, who can only be broken at so much, who falls after 7 ticks since he's not broken at self-heal. And for the 6th challenge, Team Classic totaled 131 storm ticks, and Team Modern got 153 storm ticks. Team Modern takes the win and ties the overall score at 3-3. The 7th challenge is definitely one that sounded a lot better in my head, and that is wall breaking. Shelly gets just a super that blasts into the wall, breaking 22 tiles. Colt gets 1 gadget and a super, adding 38 walls to Team Classic. Bull gets a full range super and totals 33 skulls. Brock gets a non-hyper super as well as a rocket fuel blast for his turn, and he gets 39 walls down. After that, Team Classic struggles a little bit as Rico, Spike, Barley, Jesse, and Nita all get 0, but then Dynamite scores 25 walls with his massive barrel. Then, El Primo gets a huge lead thanks to his ability to send a meteor and a super, totaling 62 walls. But then Mortis, Crow, and Poco all do 0, and Bo finishes off Team Classic with 13 walls. Remember when I said something about this being poorly planned out? Well, Hank, Cordelius, and Doug all do 0. Pearl breaks 37 walls, good job Pearl. But then, Chuck, Charlie, Miko, Kit, Larry, Lori, Melody, Angelo, Draco, Lily, Barry, and Clancy all break 0 walls, so as you can imagine, Team Classic wins this one. The 8th challenge will simply be super damage. Anything goes. Shelly pops her hypercharge and stays up close, and she does a menacing 8,064 damage on the bot. Bolt uses a plain old hyper super and he totals 9,600 damage on the bot. Bull does just 2,016 because he only gets his super. Brock, if you aim a non-hyper super a little bit below the bot, can deal 23,360 damage with the full barrage. Rico does a normal hyper super and he crushes the bot with 13,872 damage. Spike does a steady 5,000 damage. Barley does 8,000 damage with a full hyper super. And for Jessie, we gave her 2 full seconds for her to do damage. She did 10,920. Nita ties Barley with 8,000 damage. Dynamite uses a reasonably good hyper super and he does 12,000 damage on the dot. But then El Primo just does 3,800 damage with his super. It gets even worse though because then we have Mortis who does 1,800 damage. How unbearable. Crow then decides it's time to be the best here and he does a full hyper super with all of the right abilities and he totals 46,000 damage with just 1 super. Poca does 1,520 damage and Bo finishes Team Classic off with 8,640 damage. Hank starts off Team Modern with 15,840 damage. damage. And if Cordelius lets the enemy take all 3 Kingdom Mushrooms, they lose 4,194 health. Doug does nothing. Pearl does 11,200 damage. And then Chuck drops just a bit with 3,500 damage from his super. Thanks to Digestive, Charlie is able to deal 25,000 damage on the bot, and honestly, I just counted it. And Miko uses a hyper record smashing super to do 5,950 damage. Its offensive super totaled 2,500 damage on an enemy, and 2 seconds of Lori's presence was worth 4,800 damage. Angelo is able to deal 9,250 damage with an entire swamp duration, and then 2 seconds of Dragon Form Draco allows him to do 7,040 damage. Lily's gadget super does 2,000 damage, Barry's complete super can do 9,640 damage, and a full pre-nerf Clancy super was capable of 28,800 damage. Team Classic totaled 155,592 damage, and Team Modern totaled 128,740 damage. Classic wins. They now need one more point to bring home the W for the entire Olympics. For the 9th challenge, Brawlers will be in the same spot, but instead of a super, they get one full set of ammo. So Shelly does 9,450, Colt does 16,200, Bull does 13,860, and Brock uses his 4th rocket to get 18,560 damage. Rico is smart with his bounces and he does 15,840 damage, and Spike makes it close and personal and he does over 28,000 damage. Barley throws some very noxious drinks dealing 11,200 damage, Jesse does only 7,900 damage, and then Nita goes even lower with 7,200. Just like his super, Dynamite is capable of 12,000 damage. El Primo does over 9,000, but then Mortis sucks because he just does 6,000 damage. Crow is patient and he used his effects to the maximum and he totaled 13,620 damage, Poco dealt 4,500, and then Bo did 11,520 to close it off for Team Classic. Team Modern kicked off with Hank milking 4,200 damage off the bot. Cordelius uses combo shrooms to deal a bit over 12,000 damage. Doug uses 3 gadgets, totaling 14,400 damage. Carl uses fully baked hyper flaming cookies, and well, that totals 22,602 damage. Chuck does 9,720 damage up close. Charlie does 1,520. Miko does 16,350 with all of his abilities. Kit does 9,600 damage in his best conditions, you know, when he's on someone's back. Larry's 3 attacks total 8,400 damage. Melody does only 2,700 damage because unfortunately, the nodes don't count. Angelo uses a hyper super poisoned arrow and he totals 7,500 damage. Draco uses the full ammo of Dragon Form to deal 25,600 damage. Lily was able to do over 6,300 damage with just her 2 attacks. And then we have Barry, who gets 3 gadgets, as well as the Making a Mess star power, and he does 48,312 damage. Clancy does 19,200 damage on stage 3. Team Classic does about 171,000 damage, and Team Modern does 201,000 damage. And Modern's still staying strong. They won with a difference of over 30,000 damage. And for the 10th challenge, we're going to bring back a legendary piece, Heist Saves. So Team Classic starts with 3 leaderboard brawlers who crush the safe in under 2 seconds, and their second team starts to take a little bit longer, but they are done before the timer reaches 6 seconds, and then their third team was just somehow a little bit faster than the second team, maybe thanks to Brock, but then things for Team Classic slow down quite a bit as their fourth team takes them to a total time of 17 seconds. But if you think that's bad, their final team nearly doubled that 17 seconds, with of course Mortis to blame, bringing them all the way to nearly 33 seconds. Team Modern starts off not bringing the safe down in the first 2 seconds, but rather the first 4, and then their second team alone already plays slow enough that Team Classic's first 4 individual rounds were faster. Team Modern didn't necessarily get any slower for the third round though. Unfortunately, they began to push 30 seconds by the end of their 4th round, and even though their 5th team beat the save twice as fast as Classic's 5th team, they took quite a bit of time as a whole to finish the last save. Team Classic's overall time was 32.95 seconds, while Team Modern completed the task in 38.45 seconds. Team Classic wins. And that is 6 points, so Team Classic wins it all. The Super MVP Star Player Award goes to Crow, and that's all for the Olympics.
Subscribe if you wish I released this before Mo came out.
We're done. Now that Doug has been released, there are 140 gadgets in the game, and today I will be rating the annoyingness of every single one of them. Let's begin. The fast forward gadget has gotten a lot more underwhelming ever since Shelly got her dreaded speed buff. When I find one of the few Shellys that use it, it's not really bothering me. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. On the other hand though, Shelly's clay pigeons is extremely difficult to deal with. Once you're slowed down with Shell Shock, she'll spam a quick few attacks that might finish you off. This gadget is very capable of defeating you in any game mode, and I am giving it an 8 out of 10. Next up we have Nita, and I'll start off by saying that her Bear Plus gadget is so powerful, especially when it's paired up with Hyper Bear. It even gets better now that Nita has an epic pet power gear, and oftentimes there's just nothing you can do, so I'm giving this gadget a 10 out of 10. As for Nita's other gadget, Faux Fur, it of course makes the bear a lot more difficult to deal with, and passively makes Bear With Me a little bit better, and it's pretty bad but not the worst thing you'll deal with, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 on annoyingness. As for Colt, I'll say that his Speed Loader gadget is hardly going to drive me crazy in actual combat, because usually he'll just use it on a heist save, so that just gets a 3 out of 10. But his Silver Bullet, on the contrary, is super powerful in pretty much any map, where it can destroy any of your cover or give him easier access to certain parts of the map. No matter what its use is, I'm giving this Wall Breaker of Doom a 7 out of 10. Bull's T-Bone Injector gadget isn't useful in every situation, but he can occasionally just get the health he needs to survive, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. His Stomper gadget, on the other hand, is extremely difficult to deal with since it's an offensive-based gadget. The slow effect that it provides, as well as the fact that there's now a very high damage tank standing right next to you, is certainly very good at driving me crazy, and I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. As for Brock, you'll see his Rocket Laces gadget used to either escape from enemies or jump directly on top of them if it's a smart decision. So this gadget gets a 9 out of 10. Rocket Fuel is a bit less difficult to deal with because he can either open the map up for himself or blow apart all the cover that the enemies are hiding behind, and I am giving it a 6 out of 10. As for El Primo, his Suplex Supplement gadget is really good at punishing people who don't team with you in showdowns. This one gets a 5 out of 10. I'm kidding, please don't team. Asteroid Belt, on the other hand, is able to destroy walls and damage you if you stand there for long enough, but it's still a bit more underwhelming, so this gadget gets a 4 out of 10. Barley has a Sticky Syrup Mixer gadget that's really good when he uses it while standing next to a wall. Doing this, he can slow down enemies on the other side of the wall and then hit them with plenty of attacks before they escape. As a result, this gadget gets an 8 out of 10. His Herbal Tonic, however, is able to heal his teammates, but it's not always going to be a game-changing move. Plus, I'm not getting slowed by it, so this gadget gets a 3 out of 10. Poco's Tuning Fork gadget isn't really that annoying because it just heals his teammates. And I mean, he can already do that pretty well, so this gadget gets a 2 out of 10. Protective Tunes, however, can cleanse and protect his teammates from pretty much anything, even an Otis super. And if I was that Otis, I would be very annoyed. So this gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Moving on to our last rare, we have Rosa. Her Grow Light gadget makes pretty much no impact right away, and it's not annoying at all, so I give it a 1 out of 10. But her Unfriendly Bushes gadget is the complete opposite. It can either detect enemies or put them in a situation they can't get out of, so I give this one a 10 out of 10. Moving on into the super rares, we'll start off with Jessie. For her Spark Plug gadget, she's able to slow enemies within a significant range around her super. This usually enables her turret to laser any target that it slowed, and of course be hit by Jessie much more easily. This gadget gets a 10 out of 10. Oftentimes, you'll see Recoil Spring paired with the Shocky Star Power, and quite frankly, it is a deadly combo. But luckily, you can still run away from the turret at a normal speed, so I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Our next brawler is Dynamite, and his Fidget Spinner gadget is certainly getting a little bit better. It's hard to dodge, and now it deals 2,000 damage on contact, but there's still a lot worse that he can send your way, so I'm only giving it a 3 out of 10. But when it comes to his Satchel Charge attacks, I think I can say that being stunned by one of those is the most painful things altogether, so this without a doubt gets a 10 out of 10. Tick's Mind Mania simply doubles the output of his next attack. It can be very effective if it's placed right, and it's certainly annoying to be the brawler that's running into all those mines. With that being said, I give it a 5 out of 10. His last Hurrah gadget is able to prevent him from being taken out in a lot of situations. Not to mention, it can knock brawlers back if they get too close, so I will be giving this a 6 out of 10. 8-Bit's Cheat Cartridge is able to be used offensively or defensively, but given the fact that he's one of the deadliest brawlers in the game, makes this ability incredibly powerful, so I'll easily be giving this a 6 out of 10. His extra credits, however, is usually a gadget that you'll see 8-Bit's missing, but once they get this shot off on your heist save, you are in a lot of trouble. 4 out of 10. Rico's multi-ball launcher is only really effective in enclosed environments, and of course most brawlers are smart enough to not approach Rico in an enclosed environment, but with the right balances it can still do a lot of damage to you, so I will be giving this one a 3 out of 10. His bouncy castle, however, is able to fully heal him in a very short amount of time. Given that Rico also has incredibly high damage, seeing an enemy Rico use this gadget is always a little bit annoying, so I will be giving this gadget a 7 out of 10. Getting hit by recoiling rotator is far from annoying. I mean, watching a Daryl spin around and hit me for a 400 damage shot is almost like a joke, considering that it's a gadget. This gadget gets a 1 out of 10, but his other gadget is a little bit annoying since he's able to slow you down when he's already close to you to maximize his damage. This gadget gets a 5 out of 10. Penny's salty barrel can turn her attack really deadly, really fast, and of course it can tank a little bit of damage. This gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Her trusty spyglass gadget is really fun to use, but not that hard to dodge. But in most 3v3 events, this gadget can cause quite a bit of a panic, so I'll also be giving it a 6 out of 10. Next up we have Carl, and his heat ejector gadget can surprise the enemies with a very painful attack. Damage over time is usually the worst type to deal with, and Carl's gadget adds an additional 2,000 damage over a course of a few seconds, which leaves me to score this gadget as a 7 out of 10. Carl's flying hook has a different set of capabilities where it can allow him to land right next to an opponent right before using his super. This gadget gets an 8 out of 10. Jackie's pneumatic booster is way too simple of a gadget because even though it gives her a speed buff, she can usually be stopped before she makes it to her target. 1 out of 10. Her rebuild gadget usually has very limited use, and I think that its only good strategic use is to fix your net in overtime in Brawl Ball, so this gadget also gets a 1 out of 10. As for Gus, his cookie popper gadget is very consistently able to eliminate opponents, and it is super powerful. When you are that opponent, it's incredibly annoying, and this gadget easily gets a 10 out of 10. As for Soul Switcher, I don't really know how to rate it since it just fills up a spirit meter, and when you're in another team, what do you care? So this gadget gets a 1 out of 10. Moving on to epics, we'll start off with Bo. Now, Bo's old super totem would have gotten like a 15 out of 10, but since that's gone, the new version of totem still has somewhat powerful use, so I will be giving it a 6 out of 10. As for Bo's tripwire gadget, it's relatively hard to time it right so you blow up an enemy, but it is still a good resource at hitting a heist save. 3 out of 10. Ems's friend zoner gadget can be super annoying when she combines it with her attack and her super. This can easily eliminate you in any situation. 9 out of 10. Her acid spray, on the other hand, is a lot less to deal with, and it's usually used to just finish you off when you thought you got away, but in most other cases, it's just going to charge her super up a little bit. So this gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Stu has a speed zone gadget that nobody uses, which I think is good to use but not difficult to face against, so it gets a 1 out of 10. Stu's breakthrough, on the other hand, is super difficult to deal with, especially when you're a brawler who just can't defend yourself. As a result, breakthrough will get an 8 out of 10. Piper's auto aimer can slow you for long enough to hit you with a few attacks. Once you're slowed, it's pretty hard to avoid, and that can get annoying. 9 out of 10. Her homemade recipe, however, is a bit less annoying to deal with since it only affects one shot. This gadget will get a 5 out of 10. Pam's pulse modulator isn't that hard to deal with since it's pretty much an additional 2 seconds of her turret's ability, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. However, when a Pam can land an entire scrap sucker shot, it can get pretty annoying since you lose all your ammo without actually firing any of it. This gets a 7 out of 10. Frank's active noise cancelling is the perfect gadget for the brawler. It's like you think you're about to cancel a super, but then it just doesn't work. So this gets an 8 out of 10. But irresistible attraction only gets worse. When it's combined with this power grab star power, it deals enough damage to one-shot a Mortis. Either way, the overall mechanic of this gadget is pretty annoying and it deserves a 9 out of 10. BB's vitamin booster is short and simple, it just heals herself. And only sometimes the health is too much to handle, so I'll give this gadget a 3 out of 10. But being slowed by her extra sticky gadget is kind of annoying, and I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. Next up we have B, and her honey molasses gadget can be super annoying if she places it behind a wall, so I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Her rattled hive gadget usually won't defeat you, but it can either find you in bushes or of course just deal a bit of annoying damage, but either way I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Warp Blast seems to be played a lot less frequently, but when it is used it can be very surprising to the enemies and usually result in a takedown, so I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. Nanny's return to sender gadget is most definitely nightmare material. Anytime you have a high damage attack, you're always at risk of her sending it right back at you and it can possibly destroy you, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Edgar's Let's Fly is is hard to really decide the annoyingness of since it just fills his super up faster, so it gets a 1 out of 10. But 2,000 extra health is a lot for a brawler like Edgar, so his hardcore gadget is relatively annoying, and I'm giving that one a 5 out of 10. Griff's piggy bank gadget enables him to open up the map a lot so he can shred the entire enemy team with his super. So with that being said, I'll be giving it a 6 out of 10. His coin shower gadget, on the other hand, is, let's face it, not annoying or used, so I'm just gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Grom's watchtower is pretty simple, but the idea of knowing the enemy team can see you is only a little bit annoying, so I'll be giving this a 4 out of 10. But his radio check gadget is able to wipe you out really fast if he gets the right aim, so this gadget will get a 9 out of 10. Bonnie's sugar rush gadget enables her to perform a little bit faster, but I don't feel like it makes too big of an impact when I'm playing against it, so I'm only giving this gadget a 5 out of 10. But Crash Test is weak and not really used, and it's going to take a lot of convincing for me to think otherwise. With that being said, 1 out of 10. Hank's water balloons gadget pretty much just slows the enemy until his next attack is charged. It's not the most useful gadget for a slow attacking brawler, so it gets a 3 out of 10. However, his barricade gadget is actually still pretty effective with the new Hank, since it can significantly increase his durability. With that being said, I give it a 5 out of 10. Mortis's combo spinner gadget pairs well with his kinda slow reload speed, where it can finish the job that his 3 attacks started. This one gets a 5 out of 10. Survival Shovel is certainly Mortis's more popular gadget, since it enables him to charge a much bigger selection of brawlers. I'll give this a 7 out of 10. Terra's Psychic Enhancer gadget kind of just falls into the I know they can see me position, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. But her Support from Beyond gadget is really easy to deal with, but really deadly if you let it slip by and get to your high safe. Either way, it's capable of a lot if you don't deal with it properly, so I give it a 7 out of 10. Jean's Lamp Blowout is certainly capable of a good bit of torture, and it's very popularly used right after his super. In some of its cruelest cases, I think I can give it a 6 out of 10. His Vengeful Spirits, however, is honestly a really fun gadget to use, but being chased by that little thing and receiving damage when it reaches you is certainly not that pleasant, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I don't really see any annoying qualities in Max's Phase Shifter. I mean, sure, it can dodge an attack here or there, but it's still just not that bad. It gets a 2 of 10. And if you think that's bad, I think Sneaky Sneakers is like a joke gadget, and I'm giving it a 1 out of 10 on annoyingness. Mr. P's Surface Bell gadget is best used when his current porter is at really low health. Using this on top of his pet power gear is able to make the porters incredibly strong. With that being said, I give this gadget an 8 out of 10. Porter Reinforcements, on the other hand, seems to be a little bit weaker, but either way, it can get a lucky shot that will finish you off, or just be another unit that you have to deal with, so I give it a 7 out of 10. I honestly think that Garden Mulcher is very far from annoying. I mean, it's just a bit of health that Sprout will only get if he's next to a bush. So this gadget gets a 1 out of 10. Transplant is really just a pain. It can protect Sprout from you very well and pretty much prevent you from getting too close to it in a lot of situations. 9 out of 10. Byron's Shot in the Arm can heal all of the health that you just took from him, but it takes a little while. So this gadget will get a 5 out of 10. His booster shots, however, make his attacks a little bit harder to dodge or more powerful if the targets are up close. This one gets a 6 out of 10. Squeak's wind-up gadget is certainly underrated, and quite frankly, getting sniped by this gadget from a distance is pretty annoying because it does a lot of damage, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. But with proper use, Squeak's residue gadget can make a very hard to avoid slow zone, which is probably one of the most annoying things in all existence, so this gadget easily gets a 10 out of 10. Gray's mini Gene Super walking cane gadget is actually really annoying because it has quite a bit of power and it breaks all the walls between you and Gray, so I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. His grand piano, which I still miss the original of, just isn't good anymore, but it can still blow up some stuff, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. When Willow attacks with her Spellbound gadget, it makes like a mini Byron super out of her attack, but it's still somewhat hard to hit and not really that powerful, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Her dive gadget, on the other hand, is able to hide you from enemies and possibly make them waste a lot of ammo. Sometimes you can just wait for Willow to pop out, but in other cases, it can actually mess you up a little bit, so I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. When I initially did research for this video, I gave both of Doug's gadgets a 5 out of 10, but this was long before his release. Now, looking at this brawler, I'm adjusting the score of both of his gadgets to a simple 1 out of 10. Spike's popping pincushion gadget is really hard to use up close to an enemy, but you can still will deal a little bit of pesky damage if you use it at a reasonable distance, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. His life plant on the other hand got a few too many nerfs, and I feel like it's not that annoying to deal with, and I'm also just giving it a 4 out of 10. Rose defense booster gadget can combine with his extra toxic star power for maximum effect. This can make his 3600 health seem like a lot more than you would think. 7 out of 10. But now we're looking at slowing toxins, and I think we just have this rule that any slow gadget is so annoying to deal with. But Crow's slowing gadget in particular is way too easy to use, and I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. Leon's clone projector gadget pretty much stops tricking anybody who has a bit of experience in the game, but it's still able to tank half of his health if it's used properly. I'll give this gadget a 5 out of 10, but his lollipop drop on the other hand is able to hide his teammates somewhat effectively, and in its best use I would give it an 8 out of 10. Sandy's sleep simulator gadget is honestly really powerful in many situations. Imagine that you're just about to finish him off and then he suddenly has full health again. That can happen, but I don't feel like it happens all the time, so I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. His Sweet Dreams gadget, however, is really good for some of the more toxic players in the community. Either way, dealing with that instant stun is incredibly annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 9 out of 10. Amber's fire starters can speed her up, fill up her super, and now can slow down the enemies. And that all happens before it burns them. 7 out of 10. Her dancing flames doubled its damage, but it's still not really that good, so I'm only giving this one a 2 out of 10. Meg's jolting volts is not the most fun gadget to deal with, but it does take a little while for the health to fully come in, so I'll be giving this one a 5 out of 10. But her toolbox gadget on the other hand is really not the most noticeable thing you'll see, so I'm only giving this one a 2 out of 10. So I don't really know how to rate Spicy Dice, since I either don't know when the Chester uses it, or it just doesn't really make any difference at all. So I'm giving it a 1 out of 10. But his candy beans on the other hand is possibly annoying depending on what it is, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. So moving on to chromatics, we have Gale and his spring ejector gadget. This can help his team get to the center of the map quicker in 3v3s, or it can get them over annoying obstacles. This gadget still adds a bit of a fun use to the game, but in terms of annoyingness, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Gale's Twister gadget seems like it got nerfed a lot, but it's still super powerful. It can completely block certain routes for a little bit, and cancel your attacks if you use it close enough. Given all that, I'll give this gadget a 9 out of 10. Next up we have Surge, and I feel like his Power Surge gadget is really good when he's at stage 2 and he's going into stage 3. That longer range is a super strong buff for him to get for a whole 10 seconds, and because of that, I'll give the gadget an 8 out of 10. But his Power Shield gadget is still super strong even though it got nerfed. If you use it properly, you can still fully eliminate an enemy very quickly, so I'll give it a 10 out of 10. If you're like me and you miss a few too many Colette supers, her nuh-uh gadget is just for you. When dealing against it, she can just get you to low health and then finish you off with this gadget, so it's certainly a little bit annoying, and I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Colette's Gotcha gadget is super powerful against any assassins. If she gets in range where she can just spam her attacks, she'll keep her health at an incredibly high amount and most likely defeat the brawler that she's dealing with. I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. I feel like Lou's Ice Block gadget is given a bit too much credit. I mean, if he uses it up against a very close enemy, they'll still be there when the shield wears off. 3 out of 10. His Cryo Syrup is such a good gadget though, because he can use it directly after his super and freeze the enemies before they get a chance to escape his ice rink. So this gadget will get a well-deserved 8 out of 10. Ruff's Take Cover gadget is good against just some brawlers, but when it is good, it can be annoying. For instance, it can distract a tick head, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Ruff's Air Support gadget is a bit more of a controlling move than it is actually meant to take damage, and with that being said, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Belle's Nest Egg can be pretty surprising if you step on it, but usually there might be an enemy brawler lurking around, and once you're stuck in that slow effect, it can be pretty painful. I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. Belle's Reverse Polarity gadget is able to make it a heck of a lot easier for her to hit just one shot, but that just one shot can be very critical in some situations, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Usually if a Buzz uses the Reserve Buoy gadget, he's either escaping or he's rushing after a brawler that he knows he can take down, so it gets a 6 out of 10. X-Ray Shades on the other hand kind of just applies to the role where you know the enemies can see you, so I'm just gonna give it a simple 4 out of 10. Ash's Chill Pill gadget is very good at enforcing his retreat. No matter what its use, it can still restore him a reasonable amount of health. This gadget gets a 4 out of 10. Watching an Ash self-damage himself is is pretty funny, but watching the same Ash become faster and stronger is pretty unpleasant, so I'll give this one a 3 out of 10. Next up is the drama queen herself, and I'm gonna give her freeze frame gadget a 5 out of 10. It's really good at distracting the enemies a bit, but it's still a little bit easy to just not deal with. But stunt double can be used both offensively and defensively, and it can really throw off the enemies, and I'll give this one a 6 out of 10 on annoyingness. Bang's Corn Fu is really good at detecting the enemies and dealing an annoying amount of damage. I mean, it can create a massive minefield that they don't want to run through. Given all of that, I'll give this gadget a 5 out of 10, but Roundhouse Kick just easily gets a 10. Oftentimes, you'll see it as part of some combo move, and I mean, being stunned by an assassin is easily annoying. Eve's Gotta Go seems to have a lot of annoying potential if it's used at its best, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Her Motherly Love gadget, which I used and I like, doesn't really provide any annoying value to the enemy, so I'll give it a 1 out of 10. Janet's Drop the Base gadget faced a large nerf recently, but it's still super powerful. Its ability to consistently prevent your health regeneration is annoying, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Like all the other mobility gadgets, Backstage Pass is really good at being annoying, and because of that, I'm just giving it a 7 out of 10. Otis's Dormant Star gadget seems to be very rarely used, but randomly stepping on a wild sill is super painful, so I'll give this gadget an 8 out of 10. Otis's Fat Splatter gadget is a heck of a lot more popular, and it's able to deal a lot of damage and even hit you through a wall. It gets a 9 out of 10. Since Sam starts with the super, that already helps both of his gadgets. Getting pulled by magnetic field is by far one of the most annoying things in the entire game, so this gadget will easily get a 10 out of 10. His Pulse Repellent is sometimes hard to aim properly, but in the off chance that it knocks you directly towards the Sam, it can be annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. Buster's Utility Belt gadget is very powerful, but only sometimes hard to set up. With that being said, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. His slow-mo replay gadget can be very annoying though, because you can be pulled right away from your team and then get executed. This gadget gets an 8 out of 10. Mandy's Caramelized gadget might make you an easier target for her super, but they'd never really use it anyways. Either way, a slow effect that came from very, very far away is certainly very annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 7 out of 10. But Mandy's Cookie Crumbs gadget is a lot easier to be pesky with. If you're at low health, there is now nowhere that you can hide to protect yourself from this shot, so this gadget gets an 8 out of 10. RT's Inline gadget is actually so powerful, it can wipe out the entire enemy team. I'm just kidding, it's awful. It gets a 2 out of 10, no description needed. RT's Hacks gadget is probably one of the best gadgets in the game. As soon as an RT sees an enemy player that's at around 1000 health, one use of the gadget and they're just gone. 10 out of 10. Maisie is actually a really good brawler right now, and Disengage plays a pretty good role in that. Once you get too close to her, she can stun you and then attack or super you. This one gets a 7 out of 10. Maisie's Finish Them gadget is really fun to use, but sometimes the brawler is just at low enough health that the bonus doesn't really matter. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. And last but most certainly not least, we are on Cordy. His replanting gadget looks so much fun when you use it, but it's not always like the most effective thing, so it gets a 3 out of 10. But Poison Mushroom, which is literally like a mini Otis super, is out of this world annoying. If I could give this one an 11 out of 10, I would, but I'll still be fair with you, and I'm giving this gadget a 10 out of 10 on annoyingness. Anyways, 140 gadgets is a heck of a lot. If you watched the whole way to the end, you are awesome. Thank you very much. Other than that, that's all I have for today, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out, everyone. Okay everyone, it's been some time, and you like useless facts, so here's a whopping 86 of them. Although it only gives her 2 additional projectiles, Shelly's Hyper Super generally breaks an additional 5 walls if the entire thing is wasted on a wall. Nita is the only brawler who doesn't appear in her own special pin. Other brawlers like Draco and Larry don't appear in pins like their sweat pins, but they all appear in their own special pins. If you wanted to make a home screen image of Colt's feet with no shoes whatsoever, the only skin that you can do that with is Banana's Colt. Dark Angel Colt almost ruined this fact for me. Bull's skins all have teeth lines present, if they have teeth that is, but for Barbarian King Bull, they only exist for the bottom row. Rock has the word rocket in every ability that is exclusive to him. Both gadgets, both star powers, his hypercharge, his attack, his super, the whole package. El Primo's flying elbow drop was performed in real life in this video by Are You Kidding TV.
We'll drop into this pool, gets a brand new phone that you can use to play Brawl Stars. Let's see who does it.
Oh, he got one. Oh.
All right, peace, y'all.
Barley's default pin set has 2 duplicate voice lines.
I'm ready to serve. What was that?
I mean, I guess there's not that many to choose from anyways. You may have noticed that Poco skins have that jack-o'-lantern looking triangle hole for a nose, right? Well, Serenade Poco's got himself an upside-down heart. Gotta love the detail. If Rosa used the Unfriendly Bushes gadget on a map with all bushes besides the 10-player spawn tiles, the 3,590 bushes would deal a total of 990,840 damage from each individual hit combined. Their collective slow would also last for 10,770 total seconds. If you have the Energized Star Power active and a Willow controls you and uses your super for you, it becomes an impossible to destroy turret that will eternally torture you. When Dynamite uses the Fidget Spinner gadget, the 13th stick of dynamite goes in this direction. Prime example of useless, right? Although Mr. Crabstick launches money and holds it in his animation, in the little skin preview he is seen holding a Krabby Patty instead. 8-Bit is the only brawler who currently has 10,000 or more health that also actually has a decent range. He even pretty much leads the whole game in damage too, but again, he's a slow king, so that does enough balancing on its own. If you trap a Rico in a 1x1 space and use his Hyper Super, the balls bounce a total of 38 times. Daryl is a very lame and unoriginal brawler. 3 out of his 4 gadget and star power icons are shared with those of other brawlers. Despite the skull on Penny's master icon being cracked, the one on her brawler model looks perfectly smooth. Carl hasn't had a skin released since Goblin Carl in May 2023. November 1st will have been 540 days since then. The only character in Jackie's mastery title that appears in other mastery titles is the hashtag. Thank you, Ems. Gus has 6 skins, and surprisingly enough, none of them share the same hair color. How much different can they possibly make a ghost child? Bo is the only brawler with 2 Supercell make skins. Surprisingly enough, neither of them are weirdly colored or high contrast or anything. Mean Girl Ems is so mean that Poco is no longer on her phone screen. What a shame. I don't know why or how useless this is, but Jock Stew and Headless Rider Stew have the same eye structure. Weird, isn't it? Flag Bearer Piper only painted 4 of her toenails even though she has 5 toes. Don't ask me why I know that. Granted, it's been quite a while for Carl, but the last time Pam had a new skin was on September 8th of 2022 when Stonk's Pam came out. That's right, it's been over 2 years. Frank is the only brawler with essentially 2 traits. Although the attack thing isn't listed, it's enough of a trait to me. No, get out of here. BB has a lot of skins, but they're also kind of expensive. If you were to go and just buy everything, it would cost you 1,211 gems and 35,000 gold. But hey, it's pretty drippy. You know the wacky face B makes when she loses a match? Well, it looks like this for her true gold skin, which is kind of funny. Their faces don't change. If you have ever insulted the size of Nanny's peep, shame on you. According to her hypercharge, she has a big peep which only grows in size while it's being used. Remember the Edgar Apocalypse? Well, surprisingly, a lot of you probably don't. Believe it or not, we are already approaching the 4-year anniversary of the day that this brawler was released for free to the whole world, all at once. Let's talk about Griff's interesting sense of fashion. He has a mustache right there, at least that's what I think it is. He has another mustache right there, unless those are weird eyebrows, and then a bow tie on his chin. Also, there's a G on his back. That stands for Grom's Foot Patrol Star Power has these little ridges on his shoe. Pretty fitting, right? I mean, he is a castle dude, but did you notice that he's literally wearing those shoes on his default brawler model? Bonnie's Empress Bonnie skin actually has all of her teeth. Cool, yay! Gale has that weird blowy face on all of his hats except for Shell Blaster Gale. Such a shame that the mouth isn't there. Colette's mastery icon is the only one with another brawler in it. It has Spike. If you use Bell's Spotter and 4 nest egg gadgets in the same spot, you can trap the enemies with an abrupt 3,368 damage. Despite looking so jolly in Ash's mastery icon, the banana on top of Ash himself looks a little upset. Okay, I really don't know why, but the mole on Lola's face is kind of heart-shaped for Rebel Lola, but that is not the case for any of her other skins. Like, what? If you turn Dark Clown Sam around at the start of his animation, it has a really weird physique as his head turns around. I don't even know what that is. Mandy literally has 2 crowns. One on top of her head and one on her weapon thing. Default Maisie has a tiny popcorn pin on her chest, but whoa, look, Texie Maisie has a big popcorn thing on her chest. Insane! Rodeo Tank's eyes don't blink during his animation, while they do for Hank, Shark Tank Hank, and Moon Guardian Hank. How many faces does Pearl need? She literally has 3 between her oven, and her cookie. When you select Larry and Lori and you want to spin them in the lobby just for funsies, be prepared to be disappointed because Lori isn't moving. Dionysus Angelo is the only Angelo who has wings that you can't see through. Barry loves his mom. That's so sweet. And yes, in case you are wondering, I do love your mom. Shade's mastery title was actually made in recognition of what all the girls did to me when I talked to them. What color is this? If you said white, you're wrong. This is actually blue. Why else would the skin be called that? Terra's hypercharge is super massive. Maybe, just maybe, it's because it makes Terra super massive. Gene's mastery title says the same thing as his mythic gear. How original. Max was the only brawler who was released with a capacity of 4 ammo. Other brawlers like Brock who currently have 4 ammo actually took quite a while to get that 4th shot. Mr. Fly's preview has his hat to the side, kinda being impaled by his antenna, but oddly enough, the real Mr. Fly has his hat in a more normal spot. Sprout skins all have some pretty cool and unique designs for the hedge, right? Well, once you make a hypercharged hedge, they go back to the original lame design while the hypercharge is active. We all know Byron's a very snake-like brawler, with little things like a tie that looks like a snake's tongue, but did you notice that he also has a tailpiece and 2 sleeves that also have snake tongue shapes? Scary. Squeak was the first brawler that you could play in the training cave before his actual release. He's also the only brawler with a Q in his name. In Burgerloo, the cheese is beneath the patty. How dare they do something so blasphemous? Ruff's tail doesn't start wagging until his animation ends. And if you didn't know his tail wags, Ruff's tail wags if you turn him around. Born Bad Buzz has one of the most interesting pin sets. This is the laughing pin, which has the same sound as a special pin, and both of the pins have different sounds for the corresponding pin of regular Buzz.
You just wouldn't listen. Resuscitation is my vocation.
This is probably not the case for any other former chromatics. Just stare at this picture skin with me for 3 seconds and remember his face. I'm gonna ruin it for you. He has 4 eyebrows. If you look inside Eve's shuttle, you'll notice a little bulletin board with some lovely family photos. Well, did you know that this one is also her mastery icon? Either way, you can't tell me these 3 things don't all look the same. If you stand still and auto-aim a Janet super, she takes off in the last direction that you attacked in. And if you go straight up in the training cave, the super will take you perfectly to the top of the map. I'm gonna ruin another brawler for you. Stare very closely at Otis here, and okay, you ready? What if that's his tongue stuck in a bottle cap? Okay, this one ruined Buster for me because it's real. If you select Chainsaw Buster and turn everything to the side, you can see his eyes. And the worst part of it? They don't blink. Gray's fabled grand piano emerges from this, but let's see if the skins make a different grand piano portal. They don't. All of RT's regular pins are both his bottom and his top, but the Crimson RT pin set for some reason is just the top half. Or bottom, I guess. Willow can't control enemies while airborne. This is what it looks like. If Doug were to have a map made of him, it would probably look like this. Inferno Chuck for some reason has goggles on his head that you'll never see him wearing. Also, he only has eyebrows if you're using Scorpion Chuck. Would you believe me if I told you that Charlie is the... I just realized something. The other one was 68 brawlers and now we're doing with 86 brawlers. Anyways, would you believe me if I told you that Charlie is the only brawler whose portrait contains a heart? Well, you shouldn't, because Poco and Barry literally have them painted on their faces. But still, Charlie's the only one kissing in her portrait, I guess. Miko actually uses his tail for balance. I've never seen such swell use of one's 3rd leg. Melody has one of the most unique run animations in existence because, well, she skips. Lily's landing location for her super is actually based off of the enemy's position and not where Lily was when she used her super. It is their back after all. If Clancy uses pumping up in boss fight, he will reload every time one of his attacks makes the boss drop a cube. Luckily for him, this can eventually give him infinite ammo, basically. Doesn't this thing on Mo's machine look a lot like Rico's head? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Voodoo Mama Juju's teabag covers her eye in every single pin's preview, but their animations will all individually move it out of the way. Spike super is called Stick Around, and well, if you throw a poop Spike super, well, just imagine sticking around that. That's not really a fact, is it? I made these in order of rarity. We're 75 brawlers in. I'm desperate. Hypothetically, if Crow's poison damage stacked, his hyper super could literally do as much as 100,352 damage. Here's the math. Leon's hypercharge is called Limbo. And guess what rhymes with limbo? Code Jimbo. Just use it, please. It's real, don't forget about it. This is a snot bubble, right? Well, Gold Sandy has golden snot bubbles. I wonder if that means that he has... Amber was the first legendary female brawler. Yay, a woman. Meg is like one of the only brawlers ever whose mastery icon is impossible to find on her brawler model. Surge is the only brawler with the name of another brawler in his star power, to the max. If there's multiple Chesters on the same team as each other, they'll all actually have the same order of supers and gadgets. Cordelius has the longest one-word name with 9 letters. Some brawlers like Dynamite come close with 8 characters, and then Larry and Lori cheat because they have 2 names. Hit is actually possibly the only brawler whose special pin describes his own player base in its voice line.
Smartphones, stupid people.
No matter what, a Draco expose mark unfortunately cannot remove a bell mark. Or for the bell's sake, I guess it's a pretty fortunate feature. And finally, brought to us by the one and only Pen, I have this for you. What did Kenji say to be?
What's up, B?
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. I genuinely tried not to mess up this time, so here's your members and use code Jimbo.